This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, 4th of July weekend, and I'm your host, Drew Stone.
What have we become? United in hate. When did we become a divided state? Don't hate me because I'm not like you. Don't hate me, it's just a point of view. When did we become divided by hate? What have we done? Divided state. Don't hate me because I'm not like you.
I mean, what's happening? I hope everybody's well here in Estados Unidos. Happy 4th of July weekend and all that. Excited about today's show. Always excited when we get to talk about film. You know? Can I get you off the hook for old time's sake? Sorry, Sal. Sorry, Sally can't do it. Good one. Yes. Big Godfather retrospective today. Real excited. Special guest Arnie Stone will be on. It's going to be good. What's up, Drew? What's up? Stephen Oswald, Ozzy, what's happening? The point, the hardcore point. All right. Yeah, what's up, buddy? What's up, Joe Frank? Good. This is going to be great. Hey, Chris Hoffman, how you feeling, buddy? I hope you're well. Hey, Daisha, thank you. I hope you're well, hon. Not sure what this is. Is this some sort of some code? Is this some sort of Illuminati code that you're putting on the show? Yes, Lori Dawn, leave the gun, take the cannoli. Speaking of leave the gun, take the cannoli, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steven Messina.
Hey. I think I'd kill a man for cannoli right now.
This is how you just can't understand. I could kill a man. What's happening in your cannoli world?
I've had better days. I'm hanging in there. Just, you know what? I'm excited. This is like you say, when we get to talk about a movie like this is pretty amazing, you know?
Yeah.
I was at a great show last night when I saw Cartel and Neighborhood Shit. I was over at the OSU Fest in Queens, kind of Queens, Brooklyn, really. But
what was the name of the venue?
It was called Trans Pecos.
Right.
I had never been there before, but it was cool. They had good food.
Did they have cannolis?
Nobody had veggie burgers. They had vegan burgers. I think they were made out of real vegans, actually, too.
It's all about cannolis today, bro.
But, oh, yeah, no, it was fun, but it was definitely cool. And, but yeah, no, this is a movie.
But yeah, no?
Yeah, no.
But yeah, no.
I'm all over the place.
But yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
But no, yeah.
No?
No? No?
You don't say.
You're going down to the car, no?
Go to the mattresses.
Hey, send 50 mattresses over here. All right, here we go. Let's do photo of the day. Let's bring it back for old time's sake. This is photo of the day. Wrong answers only, please. Here you go. Wrong answers only, please. Photo of the day. Boom. What do we have here? Is it? Is it cannolis and sauce? Is it? Come on, let's go. Is it Venom? Is it hairy older men? Is it the Doobie Brothers? Minute by minute by minute by minute. I keep holding on. Is it the Beach Boys?
They just played
back to back. Beach Boys.
That's funny. Yeah, you know, he does look a little like Mike Love in that picture, come to think of it.
Is it the Ungrateful Dead? Al Baril says, I'll make you an offer to watch this episode. Is it
What's
Sal
up, Al?
Mineo? Is it Sal Mineo? Do you know what the Sal Mineo Planet of the Apes tie-in is?
No,
You
Tell
don't.
me.
Now you're gonna get hammered on this.
I'm in a different headspace right now.
Do
But
you
tell me
not
about it.
know Sal Mineo was in one of the Planet of the Apes films?
Oh wait, was he Was he in Escape?
Yes, he was.
Was he Dr. Milo?
Yes, he was. He was killed by
a gorilla.
Oh, fucking gorillas, bro. They fuck everything up, man.
That's right. That's right.
No, he didn't play Virgil. Was it Virgil? No, he was
Now
Dr.
Virgil was
Milo.
Paul. That was Paul Williams.
Paul Williams, right.
Was Virgil.
All right. Yeah, it was Milo. Dr. Milo.
Yep.
I think that was his last role.
Oh, that's funny. Classic.
Meanwhile, back on the music show.
Yeah, once you get us on Planet of the Apes, we're off and running.
Is it Kiss Unmasked? Is it BBD? What's BBD? Is that Death Before Dishonor? BBD? Is it Hey Guys, Happy 4th? Okay, here's another one. Okay, let's do right answers. Anybody? Does this ring a bell with anybody? Is it Scalpel? Is it Geezers at Caesars? Is it the Eagles? Come on, that's Joe Cocker. Big Audio Dynamite, I wish.
Actually, it was a big
Somebody
fight.
I never know, but somebody I never met, but in a way I know. Never thought you could get so much from a picture show. First real man dies. People ask, what's it? I love Big Audio Dynamite. That first record was great.
Did you see there was a big fight at the Eagles show the other day, apparently?
At the Eagles show?
The Eagles played, and apparently during the song Take It Easy, a brawl broke out.
Where was this?
I don't know. I saw it on the interwebs.
Wow. Is it Avail?
Ah, we go. Come on now. Thank you, Mike.
There you go. All right.
Yes, it's Avail. This was at the Knockdown Center in Queens about a week or two ago. And it was a great bill. It was Frank Turner and the Sleeping Souls, Avail, and the Bronx. And there was one other band that I missed at the beginning. I can't remember who it was. But the Bronx were awesome. Avail. It's my first time seeing Avail. I'd seen Tim Barry a bunch as a solo artist. But, I really enjoy them. Avail is one of those bands. They're kind of like a cult band. And as Drew was just telling me, he's not their first singer, which I did not know. But
I think they had one real early on.
Right. He's their most famous singer, as far as I know. And they were great. They were a lot of fun. And a lot of people are into them. I like I said, I like Tim Barry more as a solo artist, but it was great to see them. And Frank Turner, who took them out, is a huge Avail fan. So, And that was a good room, the Knockdown Center. I don't know if you've been there.
No.
But there's so many new venues popping up in Brooklyn and Queens.
Yeah.
And I was right in Maspeth, actually. But speaking of,
I'm not that familiar with this band.
They have I don't know how to describe their sound.
It looks like the singer's wearing like a Grateful Dead, some sort of a Grateful Dead steal your face kind of thing.
Oh, he is. He's definitely wearing a tie-dye for sure. I mean, and they have a little bit of a countrified twist to their sound.
I think didn't we reach out to one of the guys about being on the show?
To Tim. Yeah, to the singer, which would be great if we could get him, but yeah, no, they're cool. And they have another guy in the band who's sort of like that guy in the Boss Tones who just runs around and dances.
Oh, he's like the Flavor Flav guy?
Or like a Flavor Flav guy. They have a guy like that as well. And, but they're a lot of fun. It's, it's sort of positive stuff. Like there's not a lot of anger in their music, and I do need some anger in my music. You know,
By the way, apparently, it looks like the Eagles thing happened in the VIP section of the Eagles show in the UK. It happened on the corner of Winslow, Arizona. Yeah.
You know, I gotta say, speaking of photos, seeing Al Baril out there this week, that photo of Al and Jamie was like my favorite thing on the web.
Is that right? That was funny. Yeah.
That was great to see them together.
Hey, you know, on the last show we were doing Who Do You Want? You know, people were like, you know, who do you want on the show? Well, listen, I'll tell you something about this show. This show is all about cause and effect, because I want to announce on Sunday, August 28th, by popular demand, Jerry A of Poison Idea will be on the show. So there you go. You asked for it, you got it. The New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Jerry A, Poison Idea, Sunday, August 28th. There you go. So making shit happen on the daily. So, all right, man. Well, let's keep it moving and grooving.
All right then.
I'll see you later. That's right. Hardcore Shutterbug Steven Messina. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. And we just so happen to be graciously blessed and sponsored by New York Hardcore Comics, The Organic Grill, The Texas Silver Rush, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, Grunge and Gribe Soap Company, and 126 Hardcore Clothing. They are a streetwear brand for restless individuals who don't compromise. They're about being positive, spontaneous, and true to yourself, my hardcore friend. For years, they experimented with several printing methods and materials and collaborated with a large number of designers and illustrators, always giving room for fresh, exciting perspectives while retaining the hardcore attitude. Get in touch with them and ramp up your game at www.126hardcoreclothing.com. Come on now, DTFM Vinyl Distro is a record store that specializes in underground music, punk, ska, hardcore metal, and more. Located in the heart of Fargo, North Dakota's industrial district, shop in person or online at www.dtfmvinyldistro.com, where the motto is death to false metal. Last but not least, the Texas Silver Rush is a jewelry design firm and boutique store located in the birthplace of the Texas country music scene in Fredericksburg, Texas. Is that right? Is Fredericksburg, Texas really the birthplace of the Texas country music scene? I wonder about this. They specialize in working with musicians in all music genres to design and create unique one-off pieces, as well as style them for stage, album covers, promo photos, and social media exposure. Their client list includes Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Greg Rollet, Ringo Starr, and of course, Agnostic Front. Information and online sales are being taken at their Facebook and Instagram page, and of course, www.thetexassilverrush.com. That said, let's just make sure everybody's okay. Drew Stone, you are in an exceptionally great mood. I am. My dad is coming on the show today, and we get to talk about some films that I've loved my whole life. And also, I'm bouncing back hard from that last show. I was a little beat up on that last show, and I'm coming back with a vengeance. Yeah, Jerry A's coming on. Hello, Mike LaRouche, up in Massachusetts. Is that right, Lori Dawn? You love Poison Idea? Well, Poison Idea loves you. Yeah, man. It's happening, Paul Stone. Jerry A. It's like cause and effect. Who else do you want to see on the show? We'll announce it on the next one. So that said, let's clear the deck. Let us bring our guest on. La, la, la. Hold on. Hold your horses. Let's clear the deck. Let's get his intro. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Today's guest is an American writer, director, musician, and artist manager hailing from Westchester County, New York. As a musician, he is known for his work with the bands Blindside and Scarhead. As a writer, he's the co-author of Colombo, The Unsolved Murder. Here today to talk about his career as well as his passion for the Godfather film trilogy, please welcome, coming at us from White Plains, New York, Mr. Don Capria. Hey, man.
Drew, what's going on, bro?
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing as good could be.
Good, good. We're all excited that you're here today, man.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. This is easy. This is great.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to be fun. I feel good about it. And I did my homework. Me and my gal watched the three Godfather films.
The trilogy. Yeah.
And like really watch, like pausing and pause. I got to look that up on Wikipedia and like really going deep,
I don't know if you share that, like being a film person, it's hard to watch a film straight through nowadays. It's just like, especially when you're getting into like some kind of like biographical or something that has to do with the reality based on true events. As soon as they start saying that, like the phone's in my right hand, but even if it's not that, I'm like IMDb, and I'm like just checking out things and being like, okay, this is not true. Or, oh, that person was in that movie. Oh, that's who I know that from. You can't sit still.
Yeah, for sure. And my gal is even on board with it now. Like she's like, look it up. It's like no more like, why are you stopping the film? Now it's like we got to have everything in proper perspective here. So
yeah.
So before we make our way to the Godfather films, let's talk a little bit. Let's kind of set the stage a little bit. How did you come up? Where did you come up? Did you grow up in a household with music and film?
My mom's definitely a lover of the arts. I mean, I guess the earliest thing I knew about from music came from my mom. Huge record collection. I grew up, I was born in the 70s, so I'm an 80s kid. And there was a guitar in the corner next to all of the albums that she used to fiddle on. And then I think the first person that really got me interested in music was my older cousin, Michael, who had guitars, Van Halen posters, Rush posters. And since he had the guitars and he was always jamming on stuff, and he was playing like Rush stuff, it was kind of like, all right, I'm going to be the Neil Peart then, I can't sing. I can't be Geddy Lee, or I can't be, so even, the John Bonham and all that. So I started playing on pots and pans. And then when school came around, I think it was like
so you gravitated to drums at that point.
Yeah, just gravitated to drums. My two biggest inspos at that point in the 80s were like Neil Peart and Tommy Lee. So I had no real hardcore influence until I think I was in high school. But earlier than that, it was like metal, it was hair metal, it was rock and roll, and then the stuff that my mom was listening to too. And then, I did the band thing. I was definitely a band drummer. I started in like early elementary school through junior high. And then in high school, started to realize that I'm pretty good at this. Like, maybe I should do something besides the school band thing. And that's when you start jamming with dudes.
And I'm assuming you were in a couple of bands, and then tell us about Blindside.
Yeah, so it's the original Blindside from New York. I know there's one from Europe that got signed. So this was a New York band. They were based out of Poughkeepsie, New York, and I was playing with a bunch of different guys. I was in an earlier metal band, and then when I moved to Poughkeepsie, I immediately joined this band, and we had a pretty good run together. And I think it was around 1999. The band was kind of doing separate things, and that's when I met. I think it was Mike Gitter first was telling me that Scarhead was looking for somebody. And I had played shows with Crown of Thorns with Blindside, and, always knew about Ezak because I'm also a graffiti writer from Westchester, which was probably a more successful career of my youth than my drumming. And, knowing about all the DMS guys and the graffiti scene, and Ezak was in a band, there was a lot of similar things were going on. So, to get a chance to play in that band and go on tour, I think
So basically you were in this circus.
I was in that circus. Yeah, there's Matty Pasta. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is a little more recent, but this is definitely, I can't, as for you too, I don't know if it's the same way, but like when you're in a studio, you got to jam. So the artist management years of like walking into rehearsal studios or recording studios, like if there's drumsticks near the drums, that is a permission slip that you're allowed to play the drums. It's kind of like leaving the guitar on with the pick sitting there on the chair. So yeah, I'm constantly, that's probably a story of Soundworks.
Yeah, it looks, you know what? It looks like a story. It looks like a story of Soundworks. It is, you sent me a shot of Mez.
Yeah, that was my graffiti tag.
So that's you in that shot.
Yeah. So I was bombing with a lot of the kids that are in this crew now called DF, but we were in a crew called INC, which was a Westchester-based crew. And it was interesting. My high school, I went to Harrison High, and in my high school, like in Westchester County, we had like probably 90% of the graffiti writers that were in the county. That's me. In fact, my partner in crime in the INC crew, who I'm still really close friends with today, he ended up opening up like a branding firm, and all of my friends in the graffiti world ended up doing something in the arts as they got older, which was pretty cool to see.
I didn't know that you had that background, that you came from that graffiti background.
Yeah. I was out bombing. Mom didn't love it, but I definitely did.
And I guess, it's safe to say everything was cross-pollinating then. The graffiti scene, the hardcore scene, the management, all that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, hardcore music, for people that don't know that, versus hip hop, like there's way more graffiti writers that came out of the hardcore scene.
Right.
I knew this going to shows. You go see Burn, or you go to all, and you're like, that guy writes this guy writes that, and it was always kind of cool and creative because it was, those two were like brother and sister, graffiti and hardcore music scene. So especially look at all the album covers kids were doing.
I've said many times on the show that there was a point very early on where all these things were kind of going neck and neck. Hip hop, New York hardcore, graffiti. They were all really, really underground. Before I know hip hop exploded, and but there was a point when it was all very underground.
Yeah, it was, and you were right there watching it all happen. It was the whole neck and neck part was really like, even the business side of it. I don't think they knew who was going to be explosive. Like they were really pushing, Biohazard when you guys were in that movement and all that was going on. I thought that band was going to be one of the biggest bands in the world. And then hip hop was running at the same pace. And I remember the Onyx Slam thing. I was like, this is just insane. Like this is,
it was an exciting time, and it was a mad. What's going on here?
Yeah, this is management years. That's Danny Grizz. That was someone I managed also, who had a rap career with an Italian group called Confidential, and then he had a solo career. I used to work with him and G Fella, and then to the right is Med from Tough City Tattoos, a dear friend of mine. And Danny, I after playing in Scarhead, I stayed close with Danny, and I ended up managing him for 15 years. And it was, some of the most terrible years of my life, as anyone can imagine. No, I mean, Danny was, he was a big bro to me, and he gave me a shot, not only as a manager, as a music video director. He introduced me to people that I have these, great relationships, because for Danny, when you're traveling the country with him and you're hanging out in LA, there's no one that doesn't know this guy, and at the time, in like, the late 90s, 2000 to 2000, and all those early years, we were just meeting so many people, and just like, the connections were connections, like I said, that I still have today. He introduced me to Esteban Oriol, who ended up shooting almost every single artist that I worked with, including shooting Mr. Colombo when I wrote Colombo, the Unsolved Murder.
I saw that photo you sent me, and I was trying to figure out who he was, and I figured it was the photographer.
Yeah. So Cartoon from Soul Assassins, that entire group, Danny was the guy. So it was a lot of really, really cool people meeting through him, and still to this day, me and Danny, we talk every few days, and we've done so many projects together that it would be an entirely separate podcast to discuss all that stuff.
Thomas Starkey says Drew managed Marauder. He can relate. Absolutely, this is true, and there's just something exciting about managing, an artist like that. I mean, there's as labor intensive as it is, there's also a lot of great moments,
Yeah, it's amazing, and it showed me the ropes. I had to pay my dues somewhere, so it was amazing to be paying my dues in a band that I once played in with people that I was friends with. So putting albums together, learning the publishing side, learning the master side, learning contracts. That's tour in 2000 when we were out with VOD.
And Puerto Rican Mike was second vocalist.
Yeah, yep. So it was me. The lineup I played with was Little Tony on bass. Mitz was playing guitar. Puerto Rican Mike was the second vocalist, and then Danny. Yeah, it was a pretty good crew.
That's the Scarhead OG lineup.
yeah. It was the 3140 era. It was good stuff. Really good stuff.
That's awesome. And film-wise, were you always as a young person? What sort of brought you into the film world?
Yeah, it was a slow transition for me. I guess I started off as a writer first, and I think the moment that I got poisoned and now I'm just going to be a writer forever, no matter what happens to me, was I won an award in like 5th grade for this writing assignment. And I got like a shopping certificate to Toys R Us. And like, once that happened at a young age, that stays in your head. So I was in another writing program in school that was like, I don't know, it was like called like Gifted and Talented or something like that. And like, you had to do creative writing. So like, I was always writing these short stories, even since I was in like elementary school. And then I did it in junior high. And then, I was always like, oh, I could write a little piece of a film. And I didn't write my first screenplay until a little later on in life. But like the music video thing, kids were graduating high school and going to NYU, going to New York Film Academy. And I knew kids that were shooting music videos, mostly hip hop stuff.
Yeah.
And, going to set, it was just, for me, that was like, it was like a kid in a candy store. I'm like watching these, the 9 light go up and someone's in a rig and now they got the camera on the tracks. And I'm just like, I got to do this, So I was completely intoxicated by it. And I started off just writing treatments. And then next thing you know, I was AD and then right to director.
That's awesome. I've often said that when I come back in the next life, I want to come back as a writer or have the ability to write, because it's I cannot emphasize to people watching the show what an incredible, valuable tool it is if you're getting into the film business or the music business. Like, take our friend Dito Montiel, for instance, who grew up as part of the hardcore scene. He was part, I was part of that first wave. He was sort of in my world, in the early 80s. He was a hardcore kid from Astoria. Real rough and tumble kid, but he had the gift. He could write, and he wrote his memoir, A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints, which was about him growing up in Astoria, Queens.
Was a Major Conflict was his band?
Major Conflict was his band. That's right. And then he wrote this great memoir. And then it got noticed and picked up, and he attached himself onto it as a director, and things and things.
Sting produced, Sting and his wife, and then the rest was history. Yeah.
When we bring my dad on, we should ask him, because my dad was friends with Sylvester Stallone, and he tells a story about Sly always had this script, and Sly could write. And he always, he wrote Rocky, and
he wrote Rocky, he wrote First Blood, he wrote, every single one of them that at that era that he was knocking out. He didn't direct them all, but he was even directing, doing great.
You know who else reminds me of A Bronx Tale?
Chaz.
Yeah,
Chaz was holding on to that script. Those are those great stories where the guys, they held out for specific reasons because they wanted to see themselves playing those characters.
That's right.
And those stories to me are always amazing when someone, stonewalling Hollywood and just, not compromising and really holding to their guns on what they believe in. And then in the end, they're vindicated by the massive success of these films. Absolutely.
Sylvester Stallone, Chaz Palminteri, I got a script over there. That's my, that's my ticket. That's my vehicle. Finders Keepers is my vehicle.
Right.
It's like, everybody's got to have one.
Yeah, you got it.
Everybody's got to have one. Hey, you know what we should do before we head out of the music thing? Let's do album of the week with Sid the Kid. While we're here. No, Sid, you're coming on right now. What's your problem?
Really, Drew?
Sid?
Really?
Yeah.
Can't give you the 2 seconds? 2 seconds?
No, we're doing it. I told you, be ready.
Alrighty, what's going on, Donnie? How you doing, brother?
Sid, what's going on, bro? How you doing?
Oh, hanging in there, doing my thing.
What did you want to do? Pull out your banner? Is that what you wanted to do?
Yes, true. Hey, everyone has to have a spiel.
Here, Sid. You get this. Here, wait. You'll get this. You get the Sid the Kid. Where is it? Where's my Sid the Kid thing? Hold on. Here it is.
Yeah, where's my little ticker too there, Drew?
I'm
not good enough.
It's all happening, Sid. All right, it's all happening. There you are.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's do album of the week. Something different. This is before we head into talking to Don about his Joe Colombo book and the Godfather. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is album of the week.
See, we froze up there, Drew. Why did we freeze? Did we freeze?
It's not cold.
Oh, about to say we froze up there for a second.
Something strange happened. Hold on.
It's not cold. I don't know why we're freezing.
That's first. Hold on. Something weird happened.
The powers of the internet are stopping what's happening now.
Relax.
Bastards.
True album of the week. Boom. There it is.
There it is. About freaking time. Wow.
All right.
All righty, guys. So
all right, go ahead, Sid. Sid, you got the floor. Go ahead.
All righty. So, hey, I wouldn't have it any other way today, guys, with the theme of the show, where I guess I'm going to talk about this album. That is The Cure's 8th studio album entitled Disintegration, which was recorded at Hook End Studios in November of 1998. Ending in February of the next year, 89, with its release being on May 2nd of 89, being produced by David M. Allen and Robert Smith. Disintegration marks a return to the introspective gothic rock style that the band has always been established since the early 80s. As he neared the age of 30, Robert Smith had felt an increased pressure to follow up on the band's pop success with more enduring work. This, coupled with a distaste for the group's newfound popularity, caused Smith to relapse back into the use of hallucinogenic drugs, and the effects of which had a strong influence on the production of this album. Following the completion of the mixing, and founding member Tolhurst, I believe, Lol Tolhurst, was fired from the band just because of his, little dabble, a little bit of some stuff we won't talk about on this. But, the album did become the band's first commercial peak, charting at number 3 in the United Kingdom at number 12. And in the U.S., producing several hits, including Love Song, which peaked at number 2, I believe, on the Billboard charts. And still to this day is that biggest selling album to date.
This record's their biggest selling album?
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much. I mean, I know obviously we got to roll through this, Drew, but there's so much of this album.
Yeah.
So much of this to be talked about this record.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don, is this a record that resonates for you?
Big time. I was used to Dave. I had an older brother, 2 years my senior, and he was really listening to a lot of stuff coming out of Europe. And The Cure, had punk edge to them in the early years. And then, for me, there's a couple of bands that just transcend genre, one of them being the Cult, but also the Cure and Led Zeppelin even, right? Like they could play any kind of style and it's still Zeppelin. And for The Cure, when I heard this album, I was just kind of blown away at the different place that they went to, a little New Order vibe, but it was insanity when it came to how dark, but also receptive or accessible it could be. And there's just hit after hit on this record. It's one of those ones you just play it front to back.
I listened to this as I was getting ready for the show. I put it on as I was doing my pre-show routine, and it got me thinking. Some of these songs, or one or two of them in particular, just really transported me back, to like in space and time. And I thought of other music that does that to me. And I got to say, one of the other musics that does that to me is disco. And like when I hear, I love disco now. And when I hear it, it brings me back to growing up in New York at that time. And it just brings me back to this place. And listening to this today, it just brought me back. It just brought me back to that place, of that time in my life. And just, I don't know, people say, oh, the music's timeless. And I thought, I don't know if I would call it timeless, but this music transports me back to a certain place. That not all music doesn't do that for me, but this record's just great. And for me, The Cure is a band that is on my bucket list. I have never seen The Cure play live.
Oh my God, it stop you right there. Probably the best band I've ever seen live.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. Most definitely the best band I've ever seen play the Garden. My last time, it's been a while, 4 or 5 years since they did that. But one of the best bands I've ever seen live. I mean,
it's like every time they come in, every time they're playing, it's just like, first off, it's very hard to get tickets. And then it's always really expensive, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there's a rumor, and I don't know how true it is, because I don't know anybody that's working on the inside with them, but the early years, he used to play and record and then watch his shows immediately after, not to be bothered by anybody, because he wanted to see what they got wrong.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they sound, it's album. It's insane how much like the record they sound when you're watching those guys.
You know, I've said it before on the show, the one Cure record, my favorite Cure record is probably a record called Blood Flowers. I love that record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Sid, well done. Good call, man. Anything you need to shout out, Sid?
Well, I just wanted to just add just one little thing about the record itself. You know, Disintegration was Smith's, thematic return to the dark and gloomy aesthetic that the band was known for in the early years. You know, he deliberately sought to record an album that was depressing, as a reflection of the despondency he felt at the time. The sound, definitely does resonate on this record, and even, again, it's just that record, and you could hear it's literally a piece of himself that was brought out to the world. Like, even when the band was really pushing, getting bigger, he was not even having it. He felt like, I shouldn't play to 50,000 people going on these stadium tours. It was definitely something that was not within his realm, even though he loved what he did. Just in some weird way, he was not feeling it at the same time. So this is what this record kind of goes back to, the roots of what the band was about, especially with this record.
Yeah.
Well done, Sid. We'll talk to you soon, man. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Right.
Cheers, Sid.
All right. I threw that in there, man. I thought we'd keep it moving. Here's a question from our good friend Ray Hogan up in Connecticut. Hey, Don, any books on screenwriting that helped you?
Oh, yeah. My favorite book on screenwriting is called Story by Robert McKee, and it's probably behind me somewhere. And another great one, a very good go-to, is called Save the Cat.
Yeah, that's what he says. He says, I like Save the Cat, but looking for more.
Story's a much bigger book, much broader. It gets more in depth on what to be doing, where Save the Cat is more formula related and has a lot to do with setting up your pitching and stuff. But yeah, definitely get Story by Robert McKee. He's the guru.
Cool. Shouting out Mike Valente and Brick by Brick. What's up, Mike? How you doing?
My man.
Yeah, cool. Let's talk about the book that you co-authored, Colombo, the Unsolved Murder. How did this happen for you, and how did that come to be?
I was working I actually was doing a scripted project at the time. We shot something. A lot of the guys that know me know I did this thing called Westchester, where it was like a kind of an autobiographical piece about my life growing up in the music scene, New York City clubs and whatnot, and as an artist manager. And I was editing that, and I had spoken to a bunch of guys before about wanting to do something in that world. I was a huge mob aficionado. I read every single mob book that was available to me, some of them twice. And one of the guys that I was always reading about and interested in was the head of the Colombo crime family, Joe Colombo. And the reason why is because there wasn't a lot of information out there about him. It was kind of the same regurgitated 4 to 5 paragraphs about the shooting, the Italian American Civil Rights League.
That's right.
The Bonanno coup, on how he, flipped and went to Carlo. And I just thought that no one's doing research. Like I'm a little bit of a research bug. So I thought no one's really bringing anything new to the table. So I think I said something to someone one time. They were like, well, you could never really do a book about him because his sons are all still alive, and that would you'd need a blessing, and it would be a huge process. And then someone that I spoke to, that I knew, a street kid that I knew, calls me up one day, and he's just like, there's a guy that's looking for a writer to do a screenplay on Joe Colombo. Are you interested in messing with that? And I'm like, yeah, 100%. So he's like, well, listen, this guy's going to call you up tonight at like 11 o'clock. And I remember exactly where I was. I was in Westchester, in Ardsley, in an editing booth doing some ADR for the Westchester trailer. And I get this call from this guy, Ray, and he just starts asking me a lot of questions about myself. You know, he knew I was Italian American and that I was doing the show that involved Italians. And he had done some research, probably more research than a normal person could have gotten. And we kicked it off, and I really liked his energy. He was a very like exciting dude. And he just said to me, he's like, listen, we are probably going to be getting rid of the writer on the book. So it's not about the screenplay yet. It's about the book. Would you like to meet Joe Colombo's oldest son, Anthony? And I was like, sure. So he's like, okay, it's this Sunday. Why don't you drive upstate and we'll all sit down and we'll get breakfast and talk. So I jump in my Jeep. At the time, I think I was living in Astoria at the time. I ride up. I hit like 17 or something like that. And I'm riding, and there's this diner on the side of the road. I walk inside, round table. It was Ray. It was Anthony Colombo, Joe's oldest son. It was Anthony Colombo Jr., Joe's grandson, and Todd, who was a friend of the family that was driving, I guess, for them that day. And we all sat down and just started talking about Joe and what did I know. And I had whatever pieces of research that I could find on him that I knew about. And for that week, I definitely did some more digging. And I think there were a few interesting points that Anthony liked that I knew, which was that Joe Gallo was not the person that would have killed Joe Colombo, and the way that it was framed up that he did the murder or, you know, hired this black guy. I knew about COINTELPRO, which was a FBI counterintelligence program that started in the 1960s that Hoover used against dissident groups. And when he started to see that I was putting some puzzles and pieces together that were about a conspiracy, and that was definitely a direction and a voice that I would chase, I think I won him over at that meeting. And I know I did, because then, you know, later on, Ray would tell me stories that he got into the car with Junior and Anthony, and they sat down, and Anthony just looked at him, and Ray was sitting there like, I don't know what. I made a phone call to a guy, to another guy. I got this guy on the phone. He comes over. He's got tattoos, a bald head. I don't know what Anthony's going to think of this dude. And then Ray was like, Anthony turned and looked at him and goes, Ray, that's the guy.
Oh, good for you, man.
Yeah. And then the process then was, I had to write a treatment, a chapter, and like a full synopsis of the book. And they call it almost like a Bible package for a TV series.
Yeah, and it's like a I'm sorry, what did you call it?
In television, they call it a Bible package, which is just like everything this thing is going to potentially be. So I wrote this book treatment, turned it into their agent, who was Mickey Freiberg, Mickey Freiberg repped all of the Bonanos. He repped Donnie Brasco, did the Donnie Brasco movie. And Mickey was known as the cowboy in Hollywood. He was an old Jewish agent that really loved the mob culture and really took his hand on all these stories. Wise guy. So I got accepted. Mickey read the material. He said, yeah, this guy can write. So after that, I spent 3 years writing the book, probably about 2 of them doing extensive research, interviewing Anthony, interviewing people that they gave me access to. And the book was a process. It is, just like every good story, there's always a story behind the story. Our publisher ended up going public. So the book sat in limbo for many years. So even though I finished it in the end of 2012, it didn't come out until the end of 2015. And now there's been more talk about the book, and it's having a bit of a resurgence because of Joe's involvement in the making of the Godfather film. And also it's been 50 years since Joe's shooting in Columbus Circle. And, that anniversary always brings up story and people going back in and researching, because it's a cold case still to this day.
Yeah, it's an incredible, crazy story. Now in this picture here, this is you and Anthony. And now you worked intimately with Anthony on the book, correct?
Yeah, I spent my first probably 8-9 months just driving to upstate New York to his home. We would sit down on his kitchen. He had a big kitchen. We'd sit at the kitchen table. We had pen, paper, recording device, and he would just tell me stories. And we drank a lot of coffee. We ate a lot of Italian cold cuts. There was a really good deli nearby with some Brooklyn guys, moved upstate. And I just, some of my greatest memories are sitting on Anthony's kitchen table and just listening to all these stories that he told. And, sometimes the laptop would close and we'd go for a walk and he would tell me something that maybe didn't make it into the book.
Sure.
Because he was a very interesting man, very, very stern, but also very kind and super generous with me. As far as everything went for the process, because working creatively with someone, you can get into these areas where people don't agree. They're rushing you. They don't, they kind of want to control certain things. And Anthony was very easy to work with during the whole process.
Let me ask now, just getting a little acclimated to the history here. So Anthony was around and sort of at his father's side, really towards the end, correct?
Yeah, this picture we're looking at here is the first Unity Day rally. They ended up marching to the FBI offices, and the crowd was, so excited from the rally and from everything that was happening that it started getting a little bit crazy in front of the FBI office. And we're talking, thousands and thousands of people. So this is them on top of
what year was this? 79?
This is 1970. This is in June.
Me.
This is probably June 26th, 25th, 1970. So Anthony's in the suit on the right-hand side looking down, and Joe is holding on to the microphone speaking to the crowd because the police tried to calm the crowd down several times. And finally, a lieutenant came up to Joe and said, "Joe, we really need you to help with this because it's going to start getting crazy." And Joe was whatever you wanted to call him as far as the criminal lifestyle and his activities. When it came to the Italian American Civil Rights League, his precious child, he was a very, very firm that it was about nonviolent protests. We will become powerful only through nonviolent protest. He did not want anyone fighting. He did not want anyone cursing. He wanted them to represent themselves in a very professional manner. So yeah, this photo. This is the book cover. And there's a cool story. I think me and you kicked it one time about it.
Yeah, and you told me this great story about you searched and searched for a photographer that took a particular photo. Mm-hmm. You left a message. He called you back 6 months later. Told you he had the whole roll of film. And
Bob
Bob
D'Alessandro was he had an apartment in Harlem, and he was a street photographer from the 1960s and 70s. But then he took up a place in New Mexico, I believe. And he was just, he's older guy. He's probably still alive today in his 80s. And he just really don't play the phone. So I left a message on this 212 number that took me weeks to get this phone number. And I leave this message like, "I'd really like to contact you about this photo I saw in New Yorker, 1970. I told him the date and the page. And I didn't hear from him for 6 months. 6 months, I get this phone call. Yeah. He's like, "Hey, Don, it's Bob D'Alessandro, and I got your message. I've been in New Mexico with my wife and his girlfriend. They were together forever, but not married." And he's like, I'm coming back to New York in a few weeks. So I went to his place, and it was all the way up Central Park West. And we walk in, and it is a creator's apartment. Like, he's got this flat, and it's just like walls of little metal shelves with film rolls on them. I mean, wow. Like this guy was a photographer, legendary.
Yeah.
And he finds the roll of film because he's got everything well documented in this space. So he went and got the film developed, and that's when I found this photo, which as soon as I saw it, I just knew this was the cover. And this is Joe staring off with an NYPD officer at a rally at the FBI building on 3rd Avenue, and standing behind him, which I love, is Duke Santoro holding the sign saying, "Are we headed for a police state?" Now, one of the things I always tried to express to people and to the youth, and it's this connection between the 1960s civil rights movement and a lot of what we're seeing as far as activism today. Joe was a forward thinker. And, he says, "Are we heading for a police state?" This is 50 years ago. This guy was talking about the FBI wiretapping you illegally 50 years ago. Forget the fact if you believe he was a mob boss or not. He could have been a doctor. He could have been anything. It didn't matter. What he believed in as far as human rights that's his own, and he's allowed to have that. I don't think, and I always felt this way. I don't think people should be able to discredit your belief system because of what you do And I approached people who would ask me about, well, Joe Colombo, did he kill people? Did he do this? Did he do that? And it's like, fair enough, right? There is this whole side to him, like a Pablo Escobar figure, where it's like, you don't know what this guy did, behind closed doors in mob activity, right? Many people will never know. But I always looked at it like, well, if a doctor was in an elevator, right? And hear me out. And he gives birth, the woman's having a baby and the elevator's locked. And he saves this woman's life and gives birth to this baby. We call him a hero, right? Well, what if you found out 2 days later that doctor had killed someone in a DWI accident because he was a lush, continuously belligerent drunk who used to beat on his wife? Is he not the hero anymore? Did that incident just mean nothing now because of his past history? So it's a very interesting dynamic. I always say, don't judge a person on their worst act. I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt,
That's really poignant, and I agree with that. And I think that template could also move across to music in a lot of ways too. It's just like, hey, this guy did this or this guy did that, but he also did this incredible art. That happens a lot with art.
Yeah,
with art,
there's layers to people. We're humans, and some people are very hard to define.
Yeah.
And I think it's best that we try to stop trying to define them and just try to understand them a little bit better, even if we don't agree with things.
Let's do a plug for the book. People are asking about it. Where can the book be purchased?
I think the easiest way is Amazon. Jeff Bezos, more power to you. I wish I was as bald and as rich as you are. But if you just Google on Amazon, Colombo, the unsolved murder, and you'll see that photo with the Italian-American flag kind of
here it is
across.
I'm going to put it up again. Yeah. Here it is again. Boom. There you go.
Boom. Yeah.
Great. Let me ask you, and this, I'm going to use this as a pivot, as sort of an opportunity, as a segue here. You have a chapter in your book called "We Wouldn't Have the Godfather Without Joe Colombo," and it's really how was Joe Colombo involved in the Godfather, and sort of take us into our Godfather part here.
Yeah, the chapter is called "There Will Never Be Another You." I did the book. I formatted each chapter as a Frank Sinatra song. So what that meant for me was just that there's no other Godfather. It was the premier gangster film, and no one could ever duplicate that. And after interviewing so many people that were involved in the making of it, I got to see why it was just this perfect storm of all these different things. And one of the things that they had to do to make the film what it was today was they had to work with the Italian-American community in New York. And when Coppola signed on and Al Ruddy was producing this film, that wasn't really going to happen for them. There was a lot of activism, especially with the Italian-American Civil Rights League. There was a lot of Italian-Americans who just did not want to see Jewish producers in Hollywood make another Italian gangster film.
Sure.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons why Evans and Ruddy to bring Coppola on board, because they were like, no, we need someone, Puzo had the essence for the writing. We need someone with the directing as well to kind of bring that, just the culture of it. It's not like he had to be Italian-American, but he had to understand the culture.
Was there any sort of relevant or I don't say realistic kind of movie that touched on that subject before? Was the Valachi Papers was after, right?
It was the movie. I don't know when it was, and as far as gangster films, they've been making them since film has been in business.
But the Godfather was something else. Yeah,
the Godfather was the landmark. That is where the bar has been set since 1972, and no one has succeeded past that. So, I mean, that's arguable, of course, but I will say, as a film fanatic, I don't think anyone's topped that film. I think there's a lot of missing parts that Coppola put together, and I give him the most credit for the film that we see on the screen today, because I think he fought the hardest, and I think he had the best original vision for it. From casting to the team that he put together, and just stylistically how he wanted the pacing to be. There's a lot of stuff, if you know the book, that changed in the film.
Was Coppola involved with the writing of the screenplay, or was that Mario Puzo who wrote the screenplay?
So Puzo struggled. very hard. So Coppola came in, and Coppola, if anyone didn't know, had just won an Oscar for Patton. So he was well known as a great screenwriter.
That's right.
But he wasn't well known as a great director. He was in debt, and I think that's where Paramount was like, okay, let's hire this guy because we know he owes, like, I think it was Warner Brothers or somebody, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. He had a partner that he was living up in the Bay Area with that people may have heard of, this guy George Lucas. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
Yeah, there you go.
So that was Coppola's partner, and Lucas was like, dude, take this job, make this film. And it ended up bursting his career, and it's still today. I mean, the guy is revered as one of the greatest directors of all time.
Well, yeah, I mean, but before the Godfather, I think he directed Finian's Rainbow, and You're a Big Boy Now. Like, that was years before that, so it wasn't like he did something the year before,
No, I think it was mainly Patton, and then working on some stuff with Lucas, and they knew that he was going to do the cleanup and really help Puzo get something that was an amazing read for a book, but get out of the minds of the characters and get into the visuals. And I'll say one of the greatest things that Coppola brought to the film that Puzo probably wouldn't have had the creative mind to see was the ending scene with the christening paralleled alongside of all of the murders, right? That's a visual piece where you can't write that in a book, because when you're reading a book, you're reading scenes straight through. But in film, we get to overlay these visuals alongside of a different narrative, and that kind of combination was one of the most epic things you see inside that film.
Let's talk a little bit about the
Colombo involvement,
what's that?
I kind of skipped over the Colombo involvement, but
no. Well, we could go back to that. I'm sorry. I thought so. So my perception was Colombo was sort of the gateway to Hollywood, basically, which was Paramount at the time, right? Robert Evans, basically had to really get the blessing and go through Joe Colombo in order to get the green light for the film. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's all perspective on like how that deal was made and who won and who, because there's the John Q. Public version is that they needed to make a deal with the Italian American Civil Rights League. So Ruddy goes, meets with Colombo, hands on the script. Colombo puts his glasses on and is like, I'm not going to read this. You guys want to read it? Let's just do a deal. There's a very good reason why Joe Colombo rushed into a deal with Al Ruddy and got on his side to make this film. There's actually several. One of them is that he knew ultimately the film was going to be made, with or without him.
Sure.
The second one was he knew that at the time, the accomplishments that the Italian American Civil Rights League were having were not minuscule, but they were small. But to partner up and say that we are working with Paramount Films on The Godfather, and to be able to put that out to the press, that right there was worth more money and more deal-making power than he could have ever had at the time. So really for Joe, it was just about securing the deal with Al Ruddy and being able to say that they're working with them. So that's why it was a little bit of a rushed deal. And they rushed right into a press conference at the Italian American Civil Rights League's headquarters, the Park Sheraton Hotel. And Al Ruddy shows up, and he probably didn't really know this was going to happen, but there was cameras everywhere. They were getting a ton of press, and that got him fired. So the parent company was called Gulf and Western, which was right at Columbus Circle. Charles Bluhdorn was running Gulf and Western at the time.
Which ironically, in the end, was where Joe Colombo was basically assassinated.
Yeah, and Bluhdorn flips and says, I don't believe you did this without our permission. You're making deals with mobsters, and he fired him. Coppola held his guns. Is like, if Ruddy's gone, I'm gone. So there was a lot of the marriage between Coppola and Ruddy was done very well. Those guys really kept each other's back, and through sick and richer or poorer, those guys stuck together.
And there's a mini series now on Paramount that deals with this, correct?
Yeah, it's called The Offer, and it stars Miles Teller as Al Ruddy, and it stars Giovanni Ribisi as Joe Colombo. Now, I've watched the entire thing. I think it's super enjoyable. For doesn't know stories well, it'd be a little bit of an action ride. But after interviewing Al Ruddy, and having him on tape and talking to him and knowing the truth. There's so much fiction on the mob side of this thing. And I felt a little bit, I felt, injured by it all, because I'm just like, man, this just really just hurts, because they didn't need to go there. They didn't need to fabricate only on the mob side of things and just make up these random stories. There was such an opportunity for him to dive into Joe, and they didn't even make Anthony a character. And Anthony was the vice president of the league. He invented a character.
Oh, good old Hollywood.
Good old Hollywood. Yeah. It was, and I think Al did a lot for the film, and he's done a lot with his life, and I have nothing but respect for him. But it was a little bit too self-preserving for me watching this. Like, everyone's died but Coppola. So Joe's gone, Evans is gone, Bluthort is gone, Betty McCart is gone, Lenny Montana is gone. Gianni Russo actually is still around, and they really didn't do him they did him in a very poor way. And I just did Gianni's podcast a couple weeks ago, and I think I'm going to get back on it again and have discussions about, it's outright lies. It's,
Hollywood. I loathe it. One thing I'd like to talk about just a little bit, and then we'll take a sponsor break, and then I want to bring Arnie Stone on, my dad, to get some perspective. But one thing I want to get your take on is, let's talk a bit about the casting of this film. And this is what I'm talking about here. Is we're talking about the initial film, The Godfather. Could you give us any perspective on maybe any of the casting choices here?
Yeah. So a lot of what we see in that film, I almost say to the T, is Coppola. So these are his original casting choices. And, the one person everyone can think is, that's his sister, right? That played Connie. But she fought for the role, and she did an amazing job on it. I'm not sure exactly if Fredo was casted by him. But I mean, an amazing casting. If you know his whole story, he was casted in 5 different films that were all nominated for Best Picture, and then he passed away. John Cazale.
Which were, I believe, was it The Conversation, Dog Day Afternoon, Deer Hunter, Godfather 1 and 2?
Yeah, Dog Day Afternoon, Godfather 1 and 2, The Conversation, Dog Day Afternoon. Yeah, so it was 4, right?
Deer Hunter.
Yeah, it's insane, because Cazale was I don't know how that happened, but it's very magical. And
I was telling my gal as we were watching it, and we were watching some of John Cazale's performance. I said, this is the guy right here. This was like the actor's actor. This was the guy they were all in awe of. Like John Cazale, I said, this was the guy right here.
Yeah, super. I mean, super on screen. That guy's just every role that he's had, and so everyone that Coppola picked. Let's start with the hardest one for him to fight for was Corleone, Michael Corleone. And they had been pitching him stars and different people that wanted to play the role. I don't even know if Pacino wanted to play the role. I think he heard about Pacino, and I forget right now the name of the play that Pacino was just finishing up. And, Pacino signed on to do another film with another studio. He was going to do The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, which was, So there was definitely conflict that was happening, but, fighting for Pacino was tooth and nail. I mean, they didn't want him for his height. They didn't believe he could be evil. They didn't believe he could take the role of the Don. Even when they saw him on screen, when they first started shooting him, which was at the wedding and whatnot, they were just like, this guy is not going to do it. It was a heavy amount of arguments. A lot of people almost quitting. Coppola probably wanted to quit a few times before he finished this film, I'm sure. The Sonny character, Sonny was actually James Caan was actually going to be Michael when they wanted, and I forget.
Was Steve McQueen in the mix at one point?
Steve McQueen was in the mix. Yep, 100%. And then in The Godfather 2, trying to think, there was a character that was playing Sonny that ended up playing in The Godfather 2. Let me pull this up.
Would that be
Yeah, I don't want to get this one wrong. He's a Brooklyn guy, and he was casted. I mean, I don't know if they did the contracts, but he was definitely casted to play the role of Sonny. It wasn't Danny Aiello. It was Carmine Caridi. So Carmine Caridi, who played
actor.
Carmine Rosado, one of the Rosado brothers, right?
Ah.
He was cast as Sonny, and he was like in the bag. He was doing everything, and him and James Caan were running around Brooklyn like we're playing Sonny and Michael in the Godfather film, and
I see. I know. I see.
It didn't happen for him.
Yeah.
And then one of the greatest ones is everyone was done with Marlon Brando. They were just his career was over. No one wanted to talk about him. He's uninsurable. There's a million reasons why we were not going to sign Marlon Brando to this, and Coppola really wanted him in it. He couldn't. So there was a guy. I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it was Danny Thomas who wanted the role of the Godfather so bad that he was prepared to buy a heavy stake in Paramount, who was failing at the time. And he was going to buy that stake under the conditions that he would get the role of the Godfather. So when Mario Puzo hears about this, he sits down and writes a letter to Marlon Brando, gets his address from a friend of a friend, sends him a letter saying, "Sir, I wrote this thing. I think you're the only person," and it's probably in the good book, The Godfather Papers, Mario Puzo, about his experience writing the film. So he wrote that letter, and he wrote him back, and he said he would like to take a meeting and whatnot. And then the famous story is that Coppola shows up at his house to screen test him on this camera with no audio, and the door opens up, and here's Marlon Brando in like this kimono, and he's got the blonde hair, long blonde hair, slick back, and Coppola's just like, fuck. And he walks in a room, and he's telling him all the different things that he read about the character that he loved and how he's inspired and how he wants to portray him. And then within like 60 seconds, he put black shoe polish on his hair, slicks it back. He puts toilet paper or some paper in his mouth to widen the cheeks because he believed the Don got shot in the throat and had and then he puts on a tuxedo shirt and he just starts doing the Don, and Coppola smiling behind the camera like,
can you imagine?
Fuck, this is it. And he played that tape for everyone, and they were like, we get it. And that was all Coppola's vision.
That's Marlon motherfucking Brando, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big Marlon Brando fan. Listen, and I was also, because like I said, we just watched 1, 2, and 3, and we were talking about just the level, the high level of acting in this film. When we're watching a scene between Al Pacino and Marlon Brando. Or you're watching a scene between Robert Duvall and Marlon Brando. It's like, God damn, man.
Intense. And then the fun stories behind the scenes. Robert Duvall talks about it later. There's actually photographs you can find online that Brando was very difficult to work with. And he didn't really like reading from the script. So he needed cues. And you can find pictures online that Robert Duvall used to have to wear Marlon Brando's lines on his shirt, and you see in a majority takes of the film Brando looking down as he's speaking. I'm gonna have a talk with so and so, and he's looking for lines, man.
Wow. I mean Brando. In later years, of course, he was notorious for that. When you hear about Apocalypse Now, which was once again directed by Coppola, how at that point he was wearing an earpiece and his assistant was just feeding him lines,
Yeah. Further, the score with Robert De Niro and Ed Norton, where he got into such a beef with the director that he told him.
Go on.
That he wouldn't let him direct him anymore. So De Niro had to direct the remaining scenes, and he refused to wear pants for that whole filming. I don't know if you know, they shot that up in Canada. It was so hot. It was in the summer. He refused to wear pants. So on most of the scenes, he was like, I'm not putting pants on, shorts on, nothing.
If I'm remembering correctly, that film was directed by Frank Oz. And I guess Frank Oz was could it be that he was like involved with the Muppets or something? And Frank Oz, or the voice of, and Brando just hated his guts and refused to take direction from him.
Yeah, and it was also, in the instance of the character, there was like some light writing in the script that said that he was ambiguous, the character, and Brando really wanted to take it to full-blown, homosexuality on the screen, and he wanted to be flagrant with it, and they got into a huge beef over it, and
Voice of Miss Piggy. That's what I thought. I think Frank Oz was the voice of Miss Piggy, and Brando wasn't having it. I'm not taking direction from the voice of Miss Piggy, you know. Anyway, let me take a sponsor break here. Let me shout out our sponsors, and let's come back. Let's bring my dad on, and we'll talk a little bit about Gordon Willis and the cinematography of the film and all that. So we'll see you in a minute.
Awesome.
There you have it. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, and our guest today is Don Capria, author of Colombo, The Unsolved Murder, and also a Godfather, bit of a enthusiast and historian. And we're talking about that film today. We're going to be bringing Arnie Stone on in a couple of minutes. We are sponsored by New York Hardcore Comics, The Organic Grill, The Texas Silver Rush, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, 126 Hardcore Clothing, Grunge and Grime Soap Company, and located in Corpus Christi, Texas, Chacho's Tacos opened their doors in 2001. Home of the almighty Chacho's Taco. They cook up an incredible home-style Tex-Mex food, and this month they're celebrating their 20th anniversary. They've been supporting underground music since the beginning, and in their own words, we ain't stopping anytime soon. Touring bands that play Corpus Christi, swing by, get a home-cooked meal at Chacho's Tacos. We got you. The underground scene will never die. Please follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. Come on now, New York Hardcore Comics. They opened in 2013, selling comic books, punk rock, hardcore, memorabilia, toys, statues, skateboard decks, vinyl, and all things horror. We love helping bands push their demos or new tracks, so please stop by and drop off your new music. We have in-store events like Magic the Gathering and Warhammer tournaments, plus meet and greets with bands and some live performances. Open 7 days a week and shipping worldwide. Find us online through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and eBay. Located 117 Main Street in Dobbs Ferry, New York. www.newyorkhardcorecomics.com. Last but not least, since 1992, Generation Records has been a mainstay of the New York metropolitan area music scene. Today, they offer a diverse selection of new and used rock, jazz, indie, hip-hop, punk, hardcore, metal, blues, soundtrack, and reggae LPs, as well as T-shirts, posters, and other merchandise. They buy used record collections and music memorabilia and will pay you top dollar for them. House calls made for large collections in the tri-state area. Call or email generationrecords@gmail.com. Follow them on Facebook and on Instagram. Want to mention the next show's coming up. Coming up a week from today. There is no show on Wednesday. It is our every other Wednesday. But coming up Sunday, a week from today, Johnny Rio will be on the show. Coming fresh off his tour, playing guitar with Slapshot, formerly Street Dogs, Roger Moret and the Disasters, The Bruiser, True Intentions. Johnny Rio is 1 week from today. Get your shoes and socks on. It is right around the corner. 2 weeks from today, Mr. Nate Newton will be on the show of Converge, Jesuit, Old Man Gloom, Doom Riders, Cave In, and Cavalera Conspiracy. So we got a couple of bangers coming up. Also, I want to mention that this month on July 24th, our next Back to the New York Hardcore Roots series show at the Bowery Electric is coming up. We are celebrating Scott Dotino's birthday bash with Mad Mulligans, Dead Crew, Kings Never Die, Brick by Brick, and Sub-Zero. If it's free, it's for me, all ages. Sunday, July 24th. Clank your chains and count your change. Get your friggin' ass down there. All right? Support. Good support. You know, that reminds me. We do these shows, and I get bands reach out to me. And it's incredible how many bands reach out to me and say, hey, you know, we see what's going on down there, and we love to play, you know, one of the shows. And I say, oh, that's great. Have you or anyone in your band ever been down to one of the 25 shows that we've ever done in 3 years? It is incredible. How many bands say, oh, we've been trying, we haven't gotten down there yet? Listen, if you haven't been down to the Bowery Electric and you haven't supported any of the other bands that have played there or anything that's going on there, don't call me for a show because it's not going to happen. Support breeds support. That's how it works. In all due seriousness, come down and support what's going on, then ask me for a show. There's bands that come down every week asking for a show. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you people? I hope it does. I'm just kind of going off a little bit. Because gotta support, man. If you're not going to support any other bands, why are we going to support you? I guess I'm old school, first wave American hardcore like that. I want to mention also the Patreon page, and I want to shout out a couple of my new patrons: Johanna C, Danny Flores, Gutek D, Joe Ackerman back again, Terrence Cullinane back again. Make no mistakes about it. It is the Patreon people, that my patrons are what make this show happen. And in all due seriousness, your support is what makes this happen. Take no accept no cheap imitations. I could not do the show if it was not for my patrons on Patreon. Please join. If it's $2 or $5, but please support the show so we can keep doing what we're doing, and we're doing it. There's also a PayPal, Stone4124 to AOL. If you want to make a donation, we must keep going. Hey, patrons, by the way, if anybody wants an ID incendiary device patch and you are a patron, just send me the address and we'll get it. Thank you. I love that you are a patron, and I mean that. I could not do this. Not to sound corny, yo, but I could not do this 205 shows now or whatever without the patrons, man. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. All you. And want to shout out Hags, Kevin Haggerty. Yes, we are talking about Rampage Fest 3. It is going to be at the Boundary Electric, and it's going to be November. So get ready for Rampage Fest. Preach, Drew. Yeah. Drew, whose flag is that behind you? I think I've talked about that flag that's behind me before. It was given to me by the naval commander of Guantanamo Bay Naval Base when I went down there and produced a motorcycle stunt show. It was one of my finest moments as a filmmaker and as a producer. So there you go. Just send me the address if you want a patch, Joe. There's a whole bunch of them. If you're on Patreon, just send me your address. So there you go. One day I'll pull that out again and I'll do the whole story. So that said, I think we're straight. Let's continue on in our quest. Please, if you're not a patron, please sign up and support the show. Also, there's a subscription button right there. If you're watching the show in rerun, please subscribe. And also, I know I'm preaching to the converted. There's the Instagram on Instagram. Follow the show at Stone Films NYC on Instagram. Reach over right now to your communication device and follow me while the following's good. All right. Speaking of following, wait a second. Would that be Jimmy? Now, wow. Now I'm blown away. Okay, Jimmy G from Murphy's Law, James Drescher, one of my oldest friends in the New York hardcore scene, just did a super chat. You know, thank you, Jimmy. You just brought an incredible smile to my face, man. Let me bring Don back on. How about that, Don?
I love that guy.
Ah, that's great, Jimmy. I
love that guy. He is the cure for people's depression. If you don't smile after like getting in front of this guy, then you're hopeless. Forget it.
That's great. Thank you, Jimmy. That was nice, man. That, by the way, Jimmy, that entitles you to ask a question, any question. You go right to the front of the line. So if you have a question for Don, feel free to answer it. It can be about anything. Jimmy, we love you, Jimmy. Thank you so much. So one of the things I want to do, let me clear the deck here, because now we're cooking. I want to bring my father, Arnie Stone, on, who has had an incredible, I think 60 years in the film business. and is also a beloved figure on the show. So here we go. Hey, Pop.
Hey, Drew.
How you doing?
Hey,
I
Arnie.
tell you guys are a hard act to follow. Whoa.
You're not following, you're with us. So
that was so exciting to know. Ooh.
Hey,
Really?
Dad, fix your Kangol. You got the label sticking out. Fix your Kangol, Pop.
Oh,
there
you
you
got
go.
the camera ready. Jesus.
Help me help you.
his stylist wasn't in today. It's a Sunday, Drew. It's a Sunday. No stylist today.
We're good.
But anyway.
So there he is. Dad,
here's the thing. When I listened to you guys, both of you, it sounded like a book. It'd be a great book. Anyway, that's what I felt.
Drew and I will have to talk after.
The inside information that you have about it, it's like
well, I do need to plug a book right now, not mine.
Okay, go ahead.
So there is a book that just came out from a friend of mine who is a writer, and it's called "Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli," written by Mark Seal, who is an authority on The Godfather. I met Mark while I was writing the Colombo book, and he definitely references meeting with myself and with Anthony Colombo and his stories from behind the scenes. This is probably one of the most complete books if you want to learn everything about The Godfather. There's another book that came out many years prior. This is more visual. This is called The Godfather Legacy by Harlan Lebo, and this is a photo book that also shares many of the behind-the-scenes stories, the making of the film. More visual for people. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like to read.
Right.
So grab this one if you want to do a little more than the Pinterest.
Thank you.
Or Pinterest, whatever it's called.
So Pop, I want to ask you, Dad, I want to ask you about the look of this film, the cinematography, and specifically about Gordon Willis. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, I first want to say, the Godfather itself is on the. I'll do Gordon Willis in a second. When The Godfather was being done in 1972, I knew nothing about it. I never heard the name Francis Ford Coppola, but some of the crew guys I was working with, they were telling me, "Hey, we're working on this film, and this director does not know what the hell he's doing. We're standing around sometimes for a whole day, nothing is happening," and I thought that was fascinating. He doesn't know what he's doing. And,
he's a rookie, but he's a rookie who finished not on time, early. He delivered the negatives to them ahead of schedule, which is pretty amazing in that business.
Also, too, in 1972, I don't think the crew members knew who he was. He was not. He was like an unknown director in a way.
Yeah.
He was different than maybe other people were. These were hardened crew members.
Also, I got to say that in 1972, I think the film business and specifically sort of crew members, it was a very insular sort of world in New York City. It's not like it is now where there's schools. Oh, it's the New York Film Academy. There was a very small community of guys.
Yeah, how small it was, because I was right there.
Yeah.
It was father to son.
Yeah, I think less, and I wasn't around for this, but I think less outsiders seeking New York as a destination to work in film, where everyone was going to Hollywood to do that, where New York was core New Yorkers. And Coppola had been living in California for quite some time. So, yeah, he was.
It was very hard to get into the union. It was almost impossible to get into Local 52. But anyway, that was then. And the Teamsters ruled, as they always did. And,
and it was very mob controlled, which had a lot to do with, them aligning themselves with the league and with the people that were involved in all the unions to make the film happen. Otherwise it would have been shot on a lot in California, and Coppola would not have been directing. He was very, very firm about that.
A different type of film too, if it was shot on a lot in California.
Yeah.
But anyway, Gordon Willis. Well, let me say one other thing about The Godfather. When I grew up and came into the film business, the number one film of all time was Citizen Kane.
Still sits on the number one on the chart for the AFI.
All right.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's number one on the AFI chart.
Son of Godfather? Really? Wow. So 32 years later or so, it was 1941. It was Citizen Kane, I believe.
Mhm.
So that many years later, Godfather really was number one. And I know that Drew and I remember we had a discussion with two kids going to film school, and we said to them, "These are filmmakers. They were making, Did you ever see The Godfather? No. Did you ever hear of it? No. They never did. Are you interested in seeing it? Not really." So there you go.
Yeah, they were very nervous about putting money behind this film. That's another thing that was happening at that time. There was a company that was failing. They only had one hit. It was Love Story. So Evans was coming off of the back of Love Story with this film, and he really didn't want to spend a lot of money on it because that would have been it for him. And Gulf and Western didn't want to put up any money because they were thinking about selling the company numerous times, and mob stuff just wasn't hitting. There was a movie that came out with Kurt Russell. I think it was called Brotherhood, and that film was an absolute bomb. And
I've never even heard of it.
It made the entire industry afraid to touch something in the gangster genre. And Coppola kept trying to tell him this is not a gangster film. You know, he kept trying to tell him this transcends that genre, and I'm going to prove it to you if you give me the ability to make it my way. And you know, they're coming also off the back of a book that had been on the number one on the bestsellers list for over a year. Wow. And it's like you would think they would just throw money at this thing, but they did not.
They did not.
Hey Dad, tell us about Gordon Willis and how he came up and how he revolutionized.
Well, knowledge. I mean, I was aware of, we're the same age, and I think got into the film business at the same time. And at that time, we were shooting 35 millimeter on a BNC. I mean, you had to look through a parallax figure. You couldn't even look through the lens. There was no magnetic. It was really the beginning of, and he was right there at that start. And how he got started was as a PA.
He started at the bottom of the ladder.
Bottom of the ladder, like everyone in that time. I started off as a messenger in the film company. Everyone did that. So he came up from a PA to an apprentice cameraman to an assistant. He worked on tons of films as an assistant. He did commercials, industrial film, until he got to do a feature film. So he also was technically probably the most proficient director of photography there ever was. Maybe I put Andy Laszlo with him, who I worked with. But he was hard light guy, But when he did the Godfather, that changed the whole commercial business at that time. That opened up for all the still photographers to come in, which they did and became very successful. It changed the way we lit the sets. I remember at that time, my camera guy was Don Cohn, and Don Cohn was one of the disciples. I believe he was an assistant cameraman to him at one time in his career. And this is the first time I ever worked with Don, and we were shooting a commercial with some old-time movie actress from the 40s. Her name was Barbara Britton, So she was aging. What I saw him do, we're out there, he starts ringing the whole set with white sheets around the whole set, and then pitting the light through the sheets. I'd never seen that. So, whoa, what the hell is it doing? But then you see how her face, now she looked 20 years younger, and and that's what, okay. And that was my introduction with Don Cohn and he was telling me all about, Gordon Willis. So Gordon Willis was, I never got to work with him. The only approach I had with him was I was producing a film for Colombo Pictures, which was going to be shot in Africa, and he was my man. We wanted to get him, and he was willing to do it, but he had something else on the thing, and he took that and he didn't do it, and I ended up with Andy Laszlo. who I ended up to be real good friends with, shot a lot of things with him, and actually co-wrote a screenplay with Andy Laszlo. So you never know how things work out.
You know, Dad, we always talked about how when you're clicking through the channels and you come across the Godfather, a couple films like that, Godfather, Godfather 2, you know, there's a couple of them. Shawshank Redemption, you just end up stopping and you're there, right?
I watch it.
Yeah.
I must have watched it at least 50 times. It never gets old. It just never gets old.
Yeah, the power of that film is it's magnetic energy, and
never gets old.
I think Gordon, you know, after reading a lot of the stuff, he fought a lot with Francis. They were definitely they were having heavy combat, like screaming matches and real beefs. They didn't really get into that on the television show The Offer, and I think that they could have, because Coppola was fighting with everyone, and I think, you know, I think that's the example of genius sometimes. You know, it was just like when you know, he knew he had something that was going to change the frame. And it did. You know, it became, like I said, the landmark film for the gangster genre that we watched through and through. It's what, you know, we're 50 years. It came out 50 years ago this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because you remember one of the things that he said about photography is that you learn to eliminate opposed to adding, which is about, so he used minimum amount of light, you know, never went, and his lighting was purely enhanced the storyline. It was not photography for photography's sake. I mean, he would look at it, of course, and a lot of the cameramen don't. What's the story? Fit the photography to the story. It's not you having a sample reel for your photography.
Right. Yeah. It has to work for the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can't just be visually pleasing if it's not going to contribute to the actual story. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a great shot.
A lot of fights with directors and Coppola, because a lot of them, I don't think, understood what he was doing, because he was underexposing, overexposing. He was doing stuff that only came out in the lab. You couldn't see it.
Yeah. Right.
There wasn't you could not see what you were shooting in those days. There was no video taps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Dad, back in the day, if there was no video taps, how did you get a look through the lens?
No. Eventually, you could see through the lens.
Right, but wasn't it, what was a parallax view?
The parallax view, when you couldn't see the lens, there was a parallax view on the side of the camera. Is that what you saw? But it wasn't a true picture of what you saw. Only the cameraman saw what he was. So you had to take his word.
Almost like a viewfinder, similar to what it could be. Yeah.
But no one really knew exactly what was happening, because the cameraman was the only guy that did know. And then I don't believe there was video taps when Godfather was done either. So
you know who developed the video tap?
Who did?
Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, remember that, Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis was behind the creation, because Jerry Lewis was a very proficient director. He was the man behind the creation of the video tap. Pretty incredible.
You know, when I filmed with Jerry Lewis, came in, he started telling me where to put the lights. Excuse me, Jerry. I can handle this. You know. Yeah. But back to Gordon Willis. But he influenced the whole commercial world after that. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, that film and his work on that film.
It busted everything wide open.
You know, one thing I want to add is, I think one thing with the Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 is the sense of continuity between the two films. You know, it wasn't like, it's almost seamless. Can you give us a take on that, Don?
I mean, they went right for it. You know, they didn't really waste time. They knew, I think, during the filming process, you know, Coppola and them knew that they were just going to go right and start working on the script to expand upon the story and make the second one. And, you know, I think after going to Sicily, he knew that he could return there and implement this whole, you know, story of how the Don became the Don. And timing has a lot to do with it. And we saw that successfully with, all the Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? Another epic piece of film that it feels like you're watching something from start to finish over the course of 3 full films.
Yeah.
So there's
another series that I very much enjoyed.
Yeah.
By the way, he also used, from my understanding, the same camera is 2 in 1. The same film stock is 2 in 1, and the same lab with the same people doing the timings in the lab. He used all the same people. You know what I mean? And
here's a question from Lori Dawn. In terms of cinematography, what scene was your favorite?
Me? Every frame of the film. I'm not kidding. I don't think there's one frame in there.
It's so damn good. Don, anything in particular?
I mean, I do love the way the film opens in darkness, and that goes to Gordy, and I think that the first few shots that they made, they shot a lot of this linear. So that there was some of the first things they were working on was that, and when they sent it to Paramount, and when they sent it to Gulf and Western, they rejected it. They were like, this is not going to work. And Gordy did not do what he needed to do to even let them see that. He was like, why are you guys showing them my tape? That's not what my tape's going to look like. They don't understand my process, you know? So it was so dark, it was almost unwatchable. And, then became some of the fighting between Coppola and Gordy because he wasn't getting his actors in the light where he needed them to. And even Coppola didn't understand the artistic value that Gordy was bringing to the table because it wasn't color corrected yet. They didn't go through the correction process. So when you watch those opening scenes, I have to go back to like thinking of a true artist and the reality of the difficulty that it took him to get those scenes to look that perfect. That's not, we're not lighting it by God and throwing a huge checkerboard and the sun's beaming and we could hardly see anything, but what we see mattered so much. So the openers.
What generally happens on a film like that, they get one light dailies. The dailies that they're looking at is not timed. That's number one. The other thing in the completion, they use the process,
Technicolor?
I forgot the name of it. They use it. It'll come to me.
Yeah, no, it was the last time they used it in Godfather 2, right?
I remember working. It was separation masters. You had the negative, then you transfer the negative into 3 high quality positives with the 3 different color values, and then it was combined into the final negative. So you had absolute control of the color and what you wanted.
And for those that don't know, that the dailies are what the film people are watching after they film it, so that they can make sure that they got what they were supposed to be filming. And
here it is. I found it. Godfather 2 was the last major American motion picture to have release prints made with Technicolor's dye imbition process until the late 1990s.
Yeah, and it was done by Technicolor.
Yeah,
I believe, and then Technicolor after that went out of business, so it can never be.
But Pop, back in those days, a guy like a cinematographer would physically go to the film, would go to the transfer, and he'd be a lot more involved.
Now, here's what happened: you shoot one day, and I'm sure that happened on Godfather. You would go to the lab; they would come back with a Sinex report. It was a strip of what the latitude of the color was of what he did. He would then pick out from the Sinex to say, print it here. And that was the dailies. So we did have some control of the dailies when he picked out. You didn't send it to the lab and then they just made a print. No.
Right.
The director of photography had got it the Sinex thing. He punched out what he wanted on there and they printed based on that, which was not 100%, but that was close. Otherwise, you would have a lab technician printing it any which way he wanted.
Hey, Don, let me ask.
What happened. Yeah.
Don, let me ask you. I know there's a connection here. Could you tell us about this gentleman?
Yeah, Gianni Russo famously known for playing Carlo Rizzo in The Godfather, who was Connie's husband. And I met Gianni through Ray and Anthony Ray, who got me the Colombo book deal, and Anthony Colombo, who I wrote the book with. Interviewed him during the time that I was writing the book, trying to get some behind the scenes stories from him, and then met him several times after that. Well, I love Johnny. He's a great guy. He's got his own book out called, which actually I'm at his book signing here in Montauk, and it's called Hollywood Godfather. And he writes stories that have, it's a biography. So it's stories that have spanned his entire lifetime. So it's not just based on the Godfather film. But again, I just did his podcast recently. Hope to be doing it again with him. Great guy. You could find him in Little Italy drinking espresso and hanging out and always looking sharp.
And he's such an enduring character in The Godfather. But truth be told, he's just in the first film, correct?
Mm-hmm. He gets killed off. Michael gets rid of him for double crossing them when Sonny was killed. He was working with Barzini. And I'll tell you an interesting story about
which is this scene here.
Oh, such an epic scene.
I mean, when they got Sonny on the causeway.
Oh my God. Yeah. I love that scene. It's so intense.
It is a great scene.
It's heartbreaking. You just, I met James Caan a couple of times too. Shout out to my buddy, Big Chris from Omerta, who introduced me to him in Los Angeles. So I wanted to tell a little story about Gianni, because he's one of the people that the Italian American Civil Rights League and their involvement and Joe's involvement directly. Gianni wanted to play the role of Carl Rizzo. He wanted to play any role. He was actually cutting audition tapes of himself for multiple roles and sending it to them, and no one was trying to have him in this film. His father was in the Musicians Union, and I think he was a higher up at the time. And Gianni had been a street kid, Mulberry Street in New York and running around. So he was around the gangster element. And I think Joe Colombo, and I talk about it in the book a little bit better than now, but Joe Colombo was like the final straw of like, look, we're going to give this kid a shot. And they gave him the role of Carlo Rizzo. So without Joe Colombo's involvement with Ruddy and the filmmakers, and there were other people casted as well that came through working with the league. And that was one of the reasons why they wanted the alignment. They wanted to make sure that people that were cultured New York people in the Italian American community were in the film. The one I love the most, Lenny Montana, and I think there might be a photo of him in the wrestling photo up in there.
Of course, let me interject. Of course, Lenny Montana, you're talking about, who plays the great Lou Cabrazzi in the film, was formerly a professional wrestler. Give us some background on Lou Cabrazzi.
Yeah, so this guy's standing at around 6'7", 300 and change, and he had been a wrestler for years and always wanted to do something in Hollywood, but I think he might have done a couple of bit parts, and it didn't work out for him. So he's back in New York and Brooklyn, and he happens to be friends with a lot of guys that were involved in the rackets. One of them his name was Andrew Mush Russo, who just recently passed away. He was an accused Colombo soldier, captain, and at one point, I believe, leader in the crime family. And he used to drive for Andrew Russo. So Mush was friends with James Caan, and he was going to set and very much around the film as it was being made. And I think it was Al Ruddy who saw Lenny Montana, and they had just lost their Luca character. And Al Ruddy's looking at this guy. He's like, you got to show this guy to Francis. Like, this guy's a monster. This is Luca Brasi. So Francis takes a look at him and is like, yeah, this is it. But can he act? And he starts reading lines for them terribly, like horrifically. But Coppola knew he could make it work. So there's a very famous scene in the beginning of the film when they're at the wedding, and it's Kate and Michael sitting down, and you see Luca Brasi off to the side reciting his lines so that he could get in front of the Don confidently. He's like, your son will be a masculine son. And that is actually Lenny Montana practicing his lines. So Coppola just went and lit it and was like, I'm going to use this in the film to show how intimidated Luca Brasi is by the Don. And even in the room, the take that they got with the kid running through, he was so intimidated to meet Marlon Brando that he was fumbling on his lines even more. I think the famous one is that he told him to put "fuck you" on his lip or like a piece of paper to stick out his tongue and write "fuck you" and do it to Brando. They like made him do it because he was so nervous and sweating and he couldn't get it right. So they're like, forget getting it right. Just go in there, stick your tongue out and tell Brando, "fuck you." And he did that and everyone laughed and it kind of created a levity on the set while they were all working together.
Yeah, I've got a great Luca Brasi story. And I think after his success with The Godfather, I think he went on to do a couple other films and he turned up in a bunch of other commercials and stuff. And, for a couple of years there, I was a production assistant. I worked my way up the ladder. I was a PA for years. And I was on a shoot with him once. And there was a couple of us PAs. And all day long, we're like, could you do Luca Brasi for us? Do Luca Brasi all day long. And finally at the end, he goes, "Okay, guys." He goes, he all of a sudden he does Luca Brasi. He goes, and may your child be a masculine. And it brought down the house.
Yeah. It's as iconic as you could get. I'd love to give you this other one that's in the book as well, because a lot of the stories that Mario Puzo was writing to create The Godfather, he just took. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that the Al Martino story?
No, this is the Luca Brasi story.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is the Luca Brasi character, and that whole story. It's based on reality. So the Gallo gang, which was a Brooklyn Red Hook gang, was having a beef at time with Joe Profaci, who the Profaci crime family became the Colombo crime family after 1963. So in 1959, while these gangs were fighting with one another, Gallows had a guy by the name of Joe Jelly, who was about 5'4" tall, but also about 5'4" wide. And he was their number one enforcer. This guy was a killer that everyone in the streets of Brooklyn was afraid of. And Profaci knew that he had to get to this guy, Joe Jelly, and get him out of there if they were going to take out the Gallows. And Sally D was on the Profaci side, was also a war veteran with Joe Jelly, told him, "Look, we got to talk about this war. Let's go out on the boat. Let's go fishing." So they went out fishing on a boat, and Joe Jelly never returned. But a few days later, in front of the Gallo hangout, a shirt wrapped in seaweed and newspaper was placed in front of their haunt, which was the message that Joe Jelly is no longer coming home. He's buried in, he's in the sea. And that's where the whole Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes story comes from, directly from the story of the Gallo gang and the Profaci gang in 1959.
I'm that scene when Luca Brasi's walking in, he walks past the stained glass of the fishes. You see the fish on the glass, and it's like it's like foreshadowing that he's going to be sleeping with the fishes. The other character that's really interesting in this film, and Dad, I'm sure you could give us some perspective on it, is Al Martino, who plays Johnny Fontaine, is really like a Frank Sinatra, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the role that Sinatra obtained through help of a mobster was the one that he won, and he was nominated or won an Academy Award for
Here to Eternity.
From Here to Eternity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very much again, as Puzo's writing, he's pulling from real life events. But Al Martino really believed that he was also an inspiration for the Johnny Fontaine character, which is why he fought so hard to get the role. And Al Martino was not going to get the role once Coppola signed on. I think I mentioned this to you, Drew, that they wanted Vic Damone, and Al Martino was all of a sudden not getting the role. So Al Martino heard that I think it was Evans and Coppola and maybe Ruddy went to Vegas to go meet with Vic Damone. And Al Martino's like, no, these guys need to know that I'm going to get it. So he set up dinner for them. He set up shows for them. He set up all this stuff and really tried to smooth them. And I think Vic Damone was close enough to Sinatra, or Sinatra got a message to him like, look, if you play this, I'm going to ruin your career in Vegas. And Al Martino wasn't afraid of that. He had already had dealings with gangsters in the past. And he was just not afraid of anything that would happen after the film. He wanted the role so bad that he would do anything to get it.
Do you remember the actor's name, the studio head that ended up with the horse in the bed. You remember his name?
Well, Jack, I know Waltz. I know the fictional name,
Waltz.
but
Waltz. Jack
yeah.
Waltz.
But I'm assuming this was what, based on the Warner head or no?
No, and when the horse was in the bed.
Yes. Yeah.
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 I forgot his name, but he was my botany clothesman. He was a commercial guy. I don't know if he. Yeah.
The actor. Oh, the actor who played. Yeah.
The actor who played him.
Oh,
yeah.
let's look him up.
Well, who was Harry Cohn in Hollywood? Yeah,
Oh,
Harry.
No, Cohn. No,
Cohn. Harry Cohn.
Yeah.
That's who I think
That's
the character
another story.
was based on. Was it Warner Harry Cohn?
No, it was. Oh, I got a Cohn story. My goodness.
But that guy was who they were basing the
Well,
character on.
I forget things. I got little Drew
Yeah.
notes, but he did a lot of commercials for me. He was I'm sure
I'm looking up his name. So go on.
I have it somewhere written down. But Cohn was the head of Columbia Pictures.
Columbia. Okay.
Columbia. Okay.
Okay.
Here's the story. I'll give you a Cohn story. Oh God. Damn.
Go ahead, Pop.
My mother had a best friend, Terry. I remember her name. And my mother, long story, lived in the Bronx, and Terry lived in the Bronx. And Terry's husband was kind of a wise guy. Okay. He went to jail, and she was left with X amount of dollars. He came out of jail because she spent all the money, and he committed suicide. Well, I then had another relative who worked for Columbia Pictures, okay, who introduced Terry to Cohn, and he married her. Gee, this story just coming out of the woodwork.
The best part about interviews.
What about that in 50, 60 years? But that's
what was it?
Jack, my mother's
Jack Waltz, right?
best friend. She never talked to my mother again. And that was it. Wow.
There you go.
Jack Waltz. Harry Cohn.
John Marley, that was his name.
Oh, John Marley, of course.
Who played Mr. Waltz in The Godfather? Actor John Marley.
John Marley.
Remember him, Pop?
Yeah, he was a good friend of Ernie Pinto, and that's how I met him. Okay.
You know.
Harry Cohn. The Harry Cohn story with my mother and his girlfriend.
I got your message, Don.
Because my uncle at the time, which I didn't know, it was the head of production of Columbia Pictures, and he wasn't my uncle at the time. It ended up, it's a long story. I had an affair with my aunt, and they got married. But anyway, he became my uncle, and that's how I got into the film business.
Hey Don, can you send it to me on Facebook so I can put it right on the show? I can't get it off Instagram.
I could do it in a text, or I could do it in an email. I don't have Facebook on my phone.
Do it in email.
Email.
Yeah. What's that?
And he's sending me a picture. Another guy that I remember you used to work with a lot, Dad, was Sigourney Weaver's dad, right? Fritz Weaver.
No.
I remember you working with Fritz Weaver.
No.
That I remember.
It was nothing to do with The Godfather.
No, not. But I remember him doing commercials with you.
No, it was Melanie Griffin's husband, father. Was a commercial director, which
I got it right.
Also, so many people started at that point. Deer Hunter.
That's another film. That's another film, like in the Stone family, Don. We like, we really.
Mike Cimino started off as an animator at NPR, a commercial film company. That's where we started off.
Yeah, the Deer Hunter. The Deer Hunter is a film that really we loved.
That was anyway, bringing up a lot of.
that was great, but yeah, the Brando character, it was just. And this is that opening scene you talked about, right?
Yeah, that's the opening scene. That's so there was the climate of this film, and is happening at a time where the civil rights movement was in full-fledged, in full force, and people were the war was happening, and there was a lot of lack of faith in the country and what was going on, and that was Coppola. Another piece of his genius was the first line in the film is, I believe in America, and here is this Don, this person that's going to be a fixer and someone that's a peacemaker. It's something that you can trust, like at a time where we really can't trust a lot of the entities that are outside for us, government institutions, the police, the military complex, and our leaders. So this is what really immediately gave us the trust in this character of Don Vito Corleone. Was like, well, this guy, man, this is the man. He's going to sit at his daughter's wedding and take a meeting with anyone that requests it. It's such an epic magnetism that we have immediately for Don Vito Corleone because of the way that they present him on screen.
Yeah, Don, excuse me. What was the Harry Cohn at Columbia? What was his involvement?
Well, I think that Jack Wolt's character is based. He's based on that. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
and I think this film.
That's interesting. That's real interesting.
Yeah, and that scene with the horse's head, it goes down is one of the most really disturbing scenes, man.
Based it on Harry Cohn. Interesting.
Yeah. And if I feel like I don't want to get it wrong, but there's a Jewish gangster, Doc Stature, who was involved early on with Columbia Pictures in the 1930s, I believe. He started out. He was one of the first gangsters to go out to Hollywood and sink his teeth into the business. He was one of the guys from the Bugsy Meyer gang in the Lower East Side at first.
I heard a lot of stories I wouldn't even mention on the show. No, I just won't.
I'm running a family show here, Dad.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not going there.
Godfather is a family film. It's a Greek tragedy.
Hey, Donnie, I want to ask you about this photo here. Can you give us some perspective on it?
Yeah. So this is another great story that ties into the Godfather film, and I picked this photo in particular because of the scar that we're seeing on the right-hand person is Larry. These are the Gallo brothers. His more famous brother is Joe Gallo with the cigarette in his mouth. To the right is Larry Gallo, and they were Colombo soldiers. And Larry Gallo is the muse or the inspiration for the scene in The Godfather 2, where Frank Pantangeli goes into the bar to end up squashing the war with the Rosado brothers. This story is verbatim. I mean, verbatim what happened in 1960 with Larry Gallo at the Sahara Lounge in New York. So Larry Gallo was lured by John Shimon to come meet him to discuss the war and how they were going to stop it. Shimon hands him a $100 bill. Gallo's like, "What's this?" And he's like, "Well, it's just, a peace offering." So they walk into a bar, the Sahara Lounge, which was half closed, half open. And Gallo starts talking to another guy that was there. I think it was his actual name is Clemenza. And from out of the shadows comes Carmine Persico and Sally D. He gets roped up and they're choking him. And I believe they weren't choking him to kill him. They were trying to get the location of his brother, Joey. And at the time, this cop who was walking the beat in Brooklyn sees this place is halfway open or not and walks in. He's like, "What's going on?" Gallo's laying, feet hanging out of one of the booths. And Melvin Blay was the cop's name, sees this. Sally D comes bolting from out of the bathroom, fires at Melvin. Bullet hits him in the ear. They run out the door. Shootout in the street happens exactly as you're seeing this in The Godfather 2.
Wow.
And, about a year later when the trial happened, Melvin, the cop police officer, they had Sally D sitting on the defense stand, and he looks at him and he's like, "Yeah, that's not the guy that I saw shooting at me." So that whole Bob Riley just said that was filmed at 7B. Yes.
Right down the street from our beloved A7. Avenue A.
Exactly.
Excuse me, 7th
Shout
Street
out
Avenue
to Bob
B.
Riley.
Yep.
Yeah. It was filmed at 7B. Yeah, that bar is still an amazing place to go in and get the feel for it. But that was that took, that's right out of the Godfather papers. Mario Puzo admits very willingly that a lot of the stories he took to make the Godfather film when he was out gambling in Las Vegas, he was with a lot of wise guys, and he was hearing all these firsthand stories from the Colombo crime family, you know, and it became a masterpiece, you know. And they always say stranger than fiction, you know, is the reality of these true crime stories.
Absolutely. Hey, Pop, I'm going to take another break. Do you want to shout anybody out, Pop? It's Sunday. Do you want to shout anybody out?
I want to shout out whoever is still around that was in The Godfather, whether on crew or actors. That's a great.
All right, Pop, I'll talk to you later. I love you.
Hey, take care, Don. Thank you.
Take care, Arnie.
All right.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Let me
man.
take
a lot of years in the biz.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and then you know, sometimes you have the, you know, all of a sudden like a lightning bolt, he'll start talking about like what. You know?
That's what's great about live interview. It's organic.
Yeah.
You can run, you know, it's like a jam session, man. You know, you run in with a bunch of riffs.
It's no secret, but it's a big reason why this show's been successful. Let's take a break. Let me do my last sponsor break, and let's come back and let's take some questions from around the world, and we'll talk a little bit more.
Okay.
Well, there you have it. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. We just had the one, the only Arnie Stone on. Our guest today is Don Capria, author of Colombo, The Unsolved Murder, talking to us a little bit about the Godfather trilogy. And we're going to continue, get some questions ready. Please, let's go deep if you got something. Don't be scared. It's Sunday. It's a holiday weekend. Where the are you going? We are sponsored by blah, 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 and The Organic Grill. It's a vegan restaurant now located in the West Village of New York City at 133 3rd Avenue. 133 West 3rd Street, right next to the Blue Note. Featured in New York Magazine, New York Times, and Veg News. Their dishes have won numerous awards, including Best Goddamn Veggie Burger. They make their own cheeses, sausages, and burger patties, and every dish on the menu can be made gluten-free. This year, they're celebrating their 23rd anniversary, and they're all about having a great time while enjoying amazing, clean food. They have now fully reopened for business and look forward to seeing you. Get in touch with them. Order some great food at www.theorganicgrill.com. Last but certainly not least, Grunge and Grime Soap Company are a handmade soap and skincare company with a rock and roll spirit. Based in Nashville, Tennessee, they combine their love for rock music and their love for creating products that are good for your skin and good for your soul. Since 2019, they've been creating high-quality, natural, handmade soaps and skincare products with ethically sourced and sustainable ingredients. Inspired by the music of the 80s and 90s, from hair metal to grunge and everything in between, they give 10% of the net proceeds to local and community outreach programs. Visit the website at www.grungeandgrime.com and enter the code DREW, that's D-R-E-W, for you Neanderthals, to get 20% off your first order. Good for your skin, good for your soul, just like old-time rock and roll, Grunge and Grime Soap Company. That said, I want to mention the next, it's actually not the next 4 shows. Yeah, it's the next 4 shows, basically. Coming up on Wednesday, July 20th, Miss Catherine Popper, from Bryan Adams, Jesse Mallon, Grace Potter, Willie Nelson, Jack White, incredible bass player. Bring it on. Wednesday, July 27th, John Gooseman, Rule 'Em All, Restless Spirit, Dead Last, John the Movie. Sunday, July 31st, the one, the only Don Foos, talking about his new book. He's in the band One Life All In. And then, of course, Sunday, August 7th, Death to False Metal, Ross the Boss will be on the show. So lots going on. Don't be scared. Take my hand. That said, I think we covered everything. Listen, if you're out there once again and you're wondering, I love this show and I want to support it. Well, goddamn electric. There it is. We want you to be on the Patreon. We want you to be a patron on Patreon. So there you go. Don't be scared. Don't be shy. Let it fly. That said, let's bring our guest on. Any questions you have, now would be the time. Post them up. Let's get crazy. Here we go. Don Capria. You know what? I want to mention this again real quick and delve into this. Excuse me. Wait, I flubbed it for a second. Hold on. Let me go back. The causeway, the Sunny Causeway shooting. I want to just bring this photo up. You know, one thing that I think happens with films like Godfather and Godfather 2 and The Warriors, you know, I look being especially stuff that's shot in New York, you know, I go, where was that shot? You know, where was that shot? And you know, I often thought about, you know, and I know it's fictional, but where was where theoretically was the Corleone sort of compound? Where would it be? And I guess I kind of came to the conclusion that it had to be way out in Long Island. Is that correct?
I think they were trying to recreate Long Beach.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it was a little bit outside of the city, but still close enough to the city where he'd go there, and that's where I think that whole, you know, the gate for the toll that you'd have to go and get onto this island. You know, you can only pass and leave through it. So yeah, I think they were trying to recreate Long Beach.
Doing some research on that scene, and there is a little controversy on it, but it seems like it's not there anymore. But this was an old airfield, Mitchell's Airfield out in Long Island, and they say this is literally this part of the airfield is where they dressed, and it was done on an airfield that's no longer there.
Built the tolls out. And,
yeah.
I mean, that was the best version of squibs I had seen in an older film. And just, you know, if you don't know what squibs are, they're the you know, people aren't really getting shot. So there's these blood packets that are placed inside the clothing, and they explode to make it look like bullets are hitting you. And, you know, someone's actually firing those off. And there's probably photos, if you were to look online, at, like all the wires that James Caan is attached to just to make that scene happen. And there's a guy that's firing all these things off. It's almost like a 4th of July show.
That scene is so it plays out. It's so well done. You know, when you know, and then only later do you see how he was set up by Connie's husband, right? The woman who calls the house and says, "Can I speak to Carlo?"
Yeah.
And then you see how they played him like a fiddle, and that's why in the end the family puts it all together, and they realize it was, you know, Carlo set up Sonny.
Yeah. Barzini's a pimp.
Barzini's a pimp.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let me see.
Oh, no, Tatalia's a pimp. Am I getting quotes wrong?
Tatalia's a pimp.
It was Barzini all along. Tatalia's a pimp.
Angela says, no questions, just hi to my boy Donnie.
There's Mom. Hey, Mom.
Oh, it's your mom.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. A lot of moms come by the show when I have guests.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. We're having fun with your son on the show today. Let's see. Ray Hogan, one of our staunch supporters, says, Godfather opened the gate. Goodfellas was obviously perfect. Casino was West Coast version. What are your favorites? P.S. Anyone else get through childhood by the actress that played Apollonia? Okay. Other films, similar films that you feel really are done well?
I mean, I love all films, you know, and you pick your favorites within genre. So, you know, my favorite horror movie is Halloween. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. And that does sit up in my top favorite films of all time, just because like the stories behind that being made. I watch a television show on Netflix or a streaming show on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us. And this goes behind the scenes, almost like VH1's behind the music. And it gets to show you all the makings behind some of these films. And there's just so many films I love out there. I think Braveheart sat in as a favorite film of mine for many, many years. Just it's so replete. It's perfection to me to watch that film. And
directed by
Mel Gibson,
who also directed one of my favorites, Apocalypto.
Man, let's not even go there right now. That's so under the radar, and just when people tell me they haven't seen it, I will bother them until they see it so I can see their reaction to it.
It's a very good film, and it's not a word of English in the film. You know, it's say what you want about Mel Gibson. I mean, all his personal problems aside, the guy's directed a few really good films, including Braveheart and Apocalypto.
again, going to my point of, well, do we judge him for this or can we judge him on his art?
Sure. Sure.
So yeah, Mel Gibson is I've definitely tipped my hat to him. An amazing filmmaker and actor. Yeah.
Yep.
As far as gangster films go, if we were on that for the questioning, one of my favorite films that people haven't seen that don't watch the gangster genre too much that I always say is a great film is Eastern Promises.
I don't know this film.
Yeah, see, got one.
Yeah.
So Eastern Promises is a gangster film set in England about Russian mafia guys, and it's just an interesting storyline. The way that they shaped it, and it's not your typical approach to making a film. It involves a young woman and a child, and it's just a really good film.
After seeing you wearing a Slayer shirt, Don, is Seasons in the Abyss your favorite Slayer album?
Yeah, I mean, that's I mean, I'm gonna get hated on by a lot of Slayer fans for saying that, maybe because it's not early. Yeah, Seasons is probably my favorite album. Yeah.
Laurie Dawn breaks.
I love Hell Awaits. I love them all. I'm a Slayer fan. As a drummer, Lombardo just. That's it, like he invented thrash metal.
Thanks for bringing this up, Laurie Dawn. And let's talk about this a little bit. The role of women, particularly Connie and Kay, from the first to the third film, is probably the thing I like most about Godfather 3. Let me comment on that a sec, because we just got through Godfather 3 last night. The sort of progression, Connie's progression, from the very beginning to the end, and in my notes, one of my notes was Connie steps up in Godfather 2. That really incredible scene where she comes to Michael and just says, I know I've done things and I just want to be close to the family. And that's a heavy friggin' scene, man. That's like, that was a heavy scene. Is that right? Connie becomes Lady Macbeth. That's kind of.
She definitely has an arc from that shows the maturity of her, the understanding that the situation and it was probably hard for her to accept. Michael's the young brother, right? So with Sonny dying and Fredo gone, and she just probably had to learn that this is really it. Like, he is the Don. He is what my father once was. And she went from being this bratty girl that was able to get whatever she wanted to having to deal with Michael if she wanted to be part of that family.
And she's a great actress. That's Talia Shire, who
Coppola's sister, yeah.
Coppola's sister, who I'm sure everyone knows. That's Adrian from the Rocky films, but she's had a very proficient career herself
on her own. Oh yeah, she stands up,
and she's drop dead gorgeous in the first Godfather film.
Yeah,
I said it. Drop dead gorgeous.
So I have a question for Drew. If you had your choice of Apollonia or Connie, who are you picking?
Connie. She speaks to me, and I must say my girlfriend and her look very similar. So there you go.
You stayed true to the vision.
Yeah, I'm true to the game, man.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, let's talk about Godfather 3 a second. Which I watched the I guess it's a bit of a revised version that was just recently and I gotta say, helpful somewhat. I like the new version. I just watched it. I believe he did a little work on the beginning and the end. It certainly was a little more palatable. It wasn't as bad as I remember it. It has some great moments in it, but it has some stuff in it that really, to me, I feel like they sort of went with what was sort of going on at the time, maybe Scarface and stuff like that. Like that helicopter scene with the, where they rub out that to me was like really out of place in a Godfather film, unfortunately. Your thoughts on that film?
It's many years later, right? We're talking, I think the release of that film was in 1990.
I looked it up. It was like 18 years later, 14 years.
So much time has passed, which I don't want to say the words cash grab, but I don't think they were making that film the way that they made the other two, right? So the passion involved, and so much has happened in everyone's career since then.
Sure.
I think it was not one of those films where you saw these characters and you were like, man, they just bombed. Which I will say with confidence that I hated the Many Saints of Newark. It was just such a failed attempt at so many great characters and such a rich amount of stories that could have been told that weren't. So this one wasn't that for me. I like The Godfather 3. It just doesn't hold a candle to the two films, which, unfortunately for the third film, those two films were the two of the greatest films ever made.
Yeah.
It would have been impossible to recreate that. But, they did bring in, even a lot of people talked about, the Joe Colombo, because they were, definitely, as The Godfather is being filmed, they're filming a shooting scene. Joe Colombo was being shot in Columbus Circle while they're filming that. So I think the rise of it was Joey Zaza, when they have that character and how he's speaking to the media and he's a man for the people, and I think that they took a little bit more from mob culture and wrote some of that stuff into the film. But they didn't have what The Godfather had, because the mob wasn't the same in the 1980s as it was in the 1940s and the 50s. And I'll go to an Al Ruddy quote that I had from my book. When I was interviewing him, he told me that an FBI agent came to him many years later after the filming was done. This was someone that he was in close contact with. And he said to him, Al, you got to understand, you meeting Joe Colombo and working with Joe Colombo, he said, those were the salad days of the mafia, because these guys were gangsters and gentlemen. They had families that they went home to, and they were men of their word. They were men of honor. And, I hate to say it, but that changed in the 1980s. And not to say it across the board for people that were involved in organized crime, because that would not be fair to a lot of the men that still hold the old values. But there was a lot of guys that got involved in the rackets for the wrong reasons in the 1980s, 90s, and currently. And they just don't represent the same type of code and loyalty and honor. So the film had to change, right? So, going to the third film, the climate also had to change, and it had to become a little bit more Scarface, a little more rugged, a little more wild.
And there is some continuity there. Al Neary's in it, Connie's in it. Mm-hmm. But, like Christopher Valdez says, Duvall, Robert Duvall isn't in it. I think they didn't want to pay him, if I remember correctly. But I think his inclusion in that film would have certainly, but then again, if you think about the role that George Hamilton played in it, it was kind of minimal. I could see that Duvall, they probably didn't really, there wasn't a big spot for him.
Hamilton played Harrison, yes.
Yeah. George Hamilton.
Yeah, George Hamilton played B.J. Harrison.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I don't think who's a big Kevin Heggs Haggerty is a big fan of Godfather 3. I talked to him recently. He loves that film.
That comment is very valid. 3 standing on its own.
Yeah, he loves that film.
It's a great movie, and it's a true statement. If you want to put it up against number 1 and number 2, it's a difficult thing to rate. But if you just put it all alone, then it's a good film. Yeah.
I want to ask you, just changing gears here just a little bit. I want to ask you about this photo that you sent me that I had to take a second take from, a second look at, which is this photo here. And I only realized later that this is Lenny Kravitz's father, Cy Kravitz, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And
yes.
Tell us about what's the context of this photo.
So the league was doing a lot of stuff with media, and they had worked with Frank Sinatra, they worked with Ed McMahon, they worked with Johnny Carson, they worked with so many people. Once they started getting traction and they started making these announcements, we're working with the Godfather film, they really started working a lot with NBC. And for those that didn't know, Lenny Kravitz's father, who was not only a war veteran, who at some point hero, very tough man, he was an executive at NBC. And this is Anthony Colombo, who I wrote the book with, Joe Colombo's oldest son, meeting with Cy Kravitz at NBC Studios prior to an event that they were going to be doing.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I was like, Sidecraft, where do I know that name? It was Lenny, yeah, Roxy Roker. That's Roxy Roker was his wife.
Yes.
Lenny Kravitz was their son. Yes.
And for
Mr.
those that
Roxy
don't know,
Roker.
Roxy Roker was on
The Jeffersons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Winona Ryder was cast but dropped out.
For 3.
I think Winona Ryder would have been great.
She's great. She's killing it right now in Stranger Things seasons 4.
Yeah, I'm a fan of hers, man. She's great. You know.
Yep.
Let's see. We're heading down the home stretch here. Let's see what we got. What we got. Let's see. Well, you know. Yes, we know Sofia Coppola dated Steve McDonald from Red Cross. Yes, and she went on to direct a bunch of stuff as well.
She won an Oscar.
She won an. Oh yeah, she won an Oscar for that film. Oh yeah, no,
terrible.
It's right at the tip of my tongue.
Terrible. Not that I don't like her work. It's just I don't remember the film right now.
Somebody look that up, will you? What did Sofia Coppola win an Oscar for? They'll come up with it. Give it a minute. Yeah. No, was it the one with? No, was it the one with Bill Murray? Hold on.
Lost in Translation.
Ah, thank you.
And did she win or was she nominated? That's a good question too. Which is a feat no matter what. Nomination, win. You know, that's just some guy that didn't vote for you on the board that was like feeling he didn't like you that day. Who knows?
Oh, she did. She did win an Oscar.
She did win an Oscar. Was it Lost in Translation?
No, she won an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay for
writing.
Lost in Translation.
Yes, that's what it was. Writing, like her father. It's insane. Her father's first Oscar was for a screenplay for Patton.
You know, still to this day,
I think.
As far as the Oscars go, to me, the really great achievement is Best Original Screenplay. To me, that's incredible. You know, you're not adapting it from a book. You are
creating the story.
Yeah, creating it as a screenplay. To me, that is the great achievement at the Oscars.
So the Puzo achievement has to stand for you then, because he wins for adaptation, but the adaptation is from his own book.
Right.
So that's a big win.
Shouting out my brother, literally my brother Evan B. Stone. Yes, Lost in Translation. Yes.
Good call, Evan. Shout out.
Yeah. Yep.
I used to watch your guys' bike videos back in the day.
Oh yeah, what the 12 o'clock and
Ezak used to play them. My old office, Ezak used to play those joints all the time. We had DVDs.
Well, here's a tie-in right here with this photo. That's Mr. Caves on the left. Yes. Excuse me. Mr. Caves was a real direct connection with the Stone Brothers, and he connected us. He co-produced the first street bike film we did, which was 12 o'clock. And of course, you know, he turns up in the Many Saints of Newark, and he's been a guest on the show. Incredibly proficient artist. What's going on here in this photo?
I actually got the great opportunity to work with Caves. He was a lead role in a short film I did a few years back called Eulogy. And on my right it was a story about 2 brothers, Albanians, living in the Bronx, and one brother went to prison for murder and he kills himself. I'm sorry, his brother that's home kills himself, and he has to come home from prison to speak at the eulogy. And the twist is that you find out that the brother that was in prison didn't kill anyone, that he was actually doing the time for his older brother who was, you know, got a girl pregnant and whatnot. So Federico plays Caves' brother in this. That's Federico Castelluccio. Without the ponytail, you might not recognize him, but he played Furio from The Sopranos, and he's also an amazing artist, an oil painter, good dear friend of mine. So I got to work with Caves and Federico some years back on that film.
Wow. Now, so he is an incredible oil painter?
Yeah. He was a School of Visual Arts graduate, and he does still life oil paintings. He's an epic oil painter and a great actor, and you know, just an amazing human. I've been friends with him for years and just dig his energy.
When I was doing my homework, you know, I came across the story of this, and it's just incredible. For those that may not know, this is an incredible story, and incredible news to me. This is a painting called "The Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian," and your friend Federico apparently came across this in a gallery in Frankfurt at one point.
A small shop.
A small shop.
Yeah, in Germany.
Yeah. He recognized it for
what it was worth. Yep. So it was being presented as a piece of his understudy, and when Federico had heard that, he tried immediately to buy it, and the shop owner says, "No, it's part of going to be a gallery. We're doing with this and many other pieces." And Federico just tried again and again, and the guy just would not sell. He's like, "Look, if you really want it, you'll come back to Europe this is the time the gallery's going to have the auction, and you'll buy it at auction." So the guy couldn't sell it. I guess he was involved with an auction house already. So Federico goes home, tells his agent or his publicist or someone that he was working with at the time, and goes back to this auction, and they purchased the piece for like, I forget what it was, maybe like 50,000, 60,000.
In my notes, it was 49,000. It was like 49,000. But after sort of the this and the that and the shipping, basically it cost him 86,000. It's right. Now this painting is now valued after being authenticated at $10 million.
Yeah, so he knew that it wasn't a piece from the understudy. So they went and did the restoration, and now he has a couple million in the bank.
Wow.
Amazing. He's got a good eye. He's got a great eye. That's the art historian. That's part of college. Yes. I'm not telling everyone to go to college, but he's not someone that just went through the motions of film and all of that. He definitely digested and kept a lot of it with him.
Here's another one. Here's another one of you and him. And people that, love The Sopranos, he's a beloved character.
Yeah. Yeah, this is I did Mob Movie Con in Atlantic City last summer, and he was signing as Federico from The Sopranos, and I signed Colombo books. I was selling Omerta clothing there, and got to hang out with a whole bunch of great actors from that television show. I got to meet a lot of the guys in The Sopranos, and I'll give a shout out to Michael Imperioli, who played Christopher, who's continuously shouting me out on his podcast about my book. And
he does a great job on his podcast.
Yeah, really good. He's also a Westchester native, so shout out to all the 914 actors that are out there killing it.
Feeling Giancarlo Esposito, who was right next door here.
So let me tell you the Giancarlo thing. So
kind of cool.
I was down there, and I think at the time my girlfriend was watching the booth, and I went to the bathroom. So she knew that I was trying to see Ice-T. He was like the big draw for the event, right? And I am such a fan of his work and his music and everything that I was like, I got to get a pic with this guy. So I'm walking back from the bathroom, and she's like kind of signaling to me something. And I see Giancarlo, who knows my friend Richard Stratton. He was on his show. So I'm thinking maybe that's what it was, but I beeline for Giancarlo. I take a picture with Giancarlo, and then I come back to the booth, super smile on my face. And she's like, "You see him?" I was like, "Yeah, I just took a picture with Giancarlo." She's like, "No, Ice-T." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "You were standing 2 feet away from him. You missed that." So I literally had my back to Ice-T and Coco and totally missed my opportunity to say hello to him. And, Tim Bohr is his booking agent. So it would have been a little quick convo or whatever. And he did a song with Isaac. I don't know if everyone remembers.
He was on the Madball record.
He was on the Madball record. Yep. So, Isaac wasn't for Scarhead. It was for, what was the project he did with Jamie Hatebreed? And
Ice Pick?
Ice Pick. Yeah. Ice-T is on the Ice Pick. I think it's Oh, what's the name of that song? It's a hard song.
That whole record's hard.
Whole record's hard. Yeah. That was a great record.
Yeah. A quick Ice-T story. I've told it on the show before, but I was at the Chiller Con, in the Chiller convention thing that we go to, Alago and I and a couple of the other fellas. And I'm walking around Chiller, and I see Ice-T, right? And I'm, at the time I had a little backpack. I had a couple of the New York Hardcore Chronicles DVDs, right? Because they put it out on DVD.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And I said, I got to give one to Ice-T, right? So I kind of see him across the foyer there, and I take it out. It's in my hand, and I'm walking up to him, and he sees me and he goes, "The New York Hardcore Chronicles film. Got it and love it." And I was
You had to be blown away.
yo, I was like, bro.
Those moments are,
Yo.
they're few, but to have someone you feel, iconic and just a fan of their work. I mean, to see that, even with Michael, and I know Michael, but when he shouts me out on the podcast, I get lit up. I'm like, Giovanni Ribisi, actually, the guy who plays Joe Colombo on The Offer, he's done a bunch of interviews, and he's shouted me out as the book and the source for inspiration on finding his character for Joe Colombo, and it feels pretty cool.
Well, listen, you do good work, man, and
Thank you.
You just
likewise.
What do you attribute your work ethic to?
Man, I think that we all hope as artists one day that like we inspire something, right? That there's some kind of circle to all of this, and me being a little kid wanting to play the drums after seeing these drummers is why I became a drummer. And then for the film stuff, it's the same. It's just I want someday some kid that wants to get something out and wants to get a story out to realize that like you can do this because I've done this as well. And that's really what it is. It's some cycle of life thing for me.
Fantastic. I want to thank you for coming on the show. We had a great time. I knew we were. I love talking film. I love when guests like you come on. It's real cash. Is there anybody you want to shout out? Anybody you want to thank? Anything you want to draw any attention to?
I want to shout out, Anthony Colombo Jr., Ray, who helped me a great amount while writing the book, both of them immensely. And then all the people that I met along the way of writing the Colombo book. Shout out to Isaac for all the years of support, and all the brothers and the family that have given me support on all my ventures. And I'm working on a horror project now that's very music. It's very much involved in the music scene as well. So all the people that are helping with that as well, and I have my IG like you got there. Also, Colombo Book is another Instagram account I run specifically for that book. And you can pick it up on Amazon. And if you do and you kind of like it, you should leave it a really good review.
There you go. Thank you so much, Donnie. Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Drew.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. You know what this is, and you know why we're here. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Our guest today was Don Capria, and author of Colombo, The Unsolved Murder. We talked along with Arnie Stone about our passion for the Godfather films. It was a great show. Well, thank you, Victoria. It was a great show, and many more to come. So that said, did I mention that on Sunday, August 14th, is the Run Amok Fest, co-produced by Women of the Pit at the Bowery Electric? Yeah, it's going down with RBNX, United Blood NYC, Necrotic Society, Damn Your Eyes, the Car Bomb Parade, Enrage, and Leeway NYC. The New York Hardcore Chronicles and Women of the Pit proudly present the Back to the New York Hardcore Roots music series Sunday, August 14th. So that's going to be going down. And, we just announced this the other day down at the Bowery Electric. Sunday, October 16th. Make way. This is a banger. It's Slashers, Live Fast, Die Fast, Incendiary Device. It's going to jump off tonight. The Take and No Redeeming Social Value. Sunday, October 16th. The Bowery Electric, DJ Sid the Kid. It's free. It's all ages. We expect you to be there. Support the series. There you go. Yep. That's right. Women of the Pit. There you go. It's going to be great. Do more movie-themed episodes. We will. I enjoy them. I really do. I think the last one we did before this might have been, was it Charlie Benante when we did Jaws? Listen, we did Jaws. We did The Godfather. What's next? What's next? Oh, and we did Dave from Dog Eat Dog. We did horror films. What's next? You know what? I do Apocalypse Now. I love that film. I would do Apocalypse Now. Michael, got to shout out Michael Tittle from Grunge and Grime Soap Company. Hope you're well. Learned a lot on that one. Great show as usual, Drew. It's a great show because you sponsor it, bro. It's a great show because I couldn't do it without you. You make it a great show. Seriously, man. And thank you, bro. Yeah, we did Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes got me in a heap load of trouble. I posted all kinds of that show got taken down. I had to cut half of it out. Horror Party Beach, one of my all-time favorite B movie horror flicks, shot in Ray Hogan's home of Stamford, Connecticut. Love that film. The Rocky movies, that's a good one. We could bring my dad back on for that because he was friends with Sylvester Stallone. Right, Pop? Yep. Dad was friends with Sylvester Stallone. He always had a script, Sylvester Stallone. You know? He stayed attached to it. Apocalypse Now would be great. Yeah, we could do Stallone. We could do that. Dracula, all of them. Warriors. That's a good one. Listen, Warriors, you know, Warriors would be a good one. You know? Yeah, everyone's like, yeah, the Warriors. You know, where I live right here, I live right on Riverside Park. And I should send, where's my photo? Wait, I should just send the photo. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Well, I live right on Riverside Park where the playground is, where Cyrus was shot. I live right, I walk past it all the time. I park my car down there. Yeah, we'll do the Warriors. Sounds like everybody wants the Warriors, you know? We'll do the Warriors one of these days. And I actually know a couple of the guys that were in the Warriors at this point. You know, maybe we'll get one of them, you know. You watched the Warriors last night? Jesus, you know. I just saw there was a Warriors event in Coney Island that just got canceled. Not sure why. Can you dig it? I just took a picture in the I can't, it's going to be hard to find, but I'll dig it up. There he is. Astoria Lou. Yeah, I know Astoria Lou's all about a Warriors show. Get the Fox? Who's the Fox? Who's our boy Lou that we went and saw? We went and saw him play. What's his name that gets killed? Is that the Fox? We went and saw him play. We see him all the time. And he gets killed. He gets thrown on the train. What's dude's name? Is it? I know he plays Windows. He's in The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing also. So there you go. That said, I think we covered everything. It was a nice long show. Yes, thank you. Thomas Waits, who we see all the time here in New York. We see him in all these things. What's with the porno stuff today? How's all this porno stuff getting on the site today? All this porno solicitation stuff. Why today? I've blocked them out every time they come up. Favorite New York hardcore band? My favorite New York hardcore band? All time or right now? RS-70. Be specific. Right now or all time? And I'll answer it. Yeah, sponsorship is new sponsor. Yeah, sponsorship is in a state of flux right now. We might have, you know. Yeah, where's all time favorite New York hardcore band? Well, if Biohazard was a New York hardcore band, of course it would be Biohazard. But I don't consider Biohazard a hardcore band per se. I'm like an old school. I'm an old school first wave American hardcore guy. So for me, hardcore is like Minor Threat, Agnostic Front. You know, Biohazard, I know, is not a hardcore band. Marauder's not a hardcore band to me. You know, I mean, but if you want to consider Biohazard a hardcore band, it'd be Biohazard. But I love Sick of It All, of course. You know, I love all, you know, the usual suspects. You know, Token Entry for you, is that right? Who do you want on the show? Ian Mackay, who we almost had for the 200 show. Roger Waters, Bob Dylan, Bob Weir, Steve Parrish. If anybody knows who Steve Parrish is. Daniel, thanks. Good show. I like the non-band interviews. Yeah, you got to break it up once in a while. You know, where our propane from? Gary's from Long Island. He used to be in the Crumbsuckers. Lars from Rancid. Yeah, we should get this. Just a Vinny Raffa. Good one. That's a good one. I saw a bunch of Vinny stickers yesterday when I was up his way. You know, it's funny because we did this during the last show about who you want to see on the show. And somebody was like, we want Jerry A from Poison Idea. And you know what? It took all of about 24 hours to make that happen. Jerry A is coming on the show. That's happening. So, pow. Bim. How about Dick Van Dyke? Yeah, good one. I'd love to have Dick Van Dyke on the show. Hell yeah. There you go. That took about 24 hours for that to happen. So there you go. Things happen quick around here. Yep. Jerry A. You know? Have I forgiven Ron Rancid yet? Yes, he's forgiven for. I'm like the pod. Forgive him for all. Yes, he's forgiven. All right. Love to talk to Dick Van Dyke. That'd be a good one. Dick Van Dyke's like 100 years old now, right? How old is Dick Van Dyke? Mel Brooks turned 95 the other day. Dick Van Dyke. How old is that guy? Let's see. 96. Dick Van Dyke's 96. Mel Brooks is 95. Yeah, I'm friends with Thomas. I got his number. Yeah, I have his number in my phone. But we can't ask Thomas to come on the show. He gets paid to do his Warriors stuff. You know? How do you ask him? Like, hey, I know you usually get paid to talk about the Warriors, but will you come on my show? I don't know. You know? We'll see. Well, there you go. I think we're good. Let's have a good 4th of July weekend, everybody. Fun show today. We'll see you a week from today for Johnny Rio. And it's going to be great. Until then, do good things, and good things will come to you.
What have we become?